Good morning. We're back in order of the meeting from our recess from the 16th. And Mr. Mayor, I believe you have the invocation this morning.
Let us pray. God, Father, we are grateful again that we're able to come together. We are so thankful for this country that you have given us the right and the privilege to live in. Father, we ask, Father, that today you would protect and give the people that watch over us, our property and ourselves, emergency services, police departments, sheriff departments, firemen. We thank you, Father, for their service to our county and protection of our citizens and property. And Father, today we also ask a special blessing for our country, our county especially, as we have some things that are not pleasing to you that are in our county, state, and nation. We ask, Father, that you might give us the wisdom to come together and be as one, as you have intended us to be. Bless this meeting we're about to partake in. We thank you for your many blessings upon this county. We ask you continue to bless it. These things I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Hancock, you have the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're very fortunate this morning to have Dr. Dunsmore and his staff in here. I see him squinting over there a little bit as he rolls under the table there. He and I have something in common. We both had surgery recently. He was on his knee, mine on my shoulder. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Dunsmore. Unless you want to have something to say, George, I'll go ahead and just turn it over to Dr. Dunsmore.
No, Mike have talked about his budget, and I think we're in agreement on the amount as far as what we're recommending to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Well, good morning. First off, thank you for having us today. It is a pleasure to come down here and speak with you today. Along with me is Mr. Hayes, our finance officer, and Dr. David Lewis, who also handles all of our technology in case there is any questions. What we have in front of you is what we came out of with our last joint meeting with the Board of Education. And I can just walk you down through that. At the top is our appropriation, this year's increase, and what the total appropriation would be. If you recall at our joint meeting, we had conversations about textbooks, what it would cost to put a textbook in every child's hand. We are estimating that at $5 million, and then the replacement and ongoing upgrading of the textbooks each year, approximately $1 million. The teacher supplements, we figured this on a 1 percentage point. Mr. Wood and I also had spoken about a half percentage point, and that is carried out over that 5 years, so you can see those numbers. I did get our surrounding county numbers. Obviously, Johnston County is our highest. Their supplements anywhere from 10 to 13%. Pitt County, who is in the same position we are, they're at 5.25%. They're also looking at this year of doing an increase similar to what we are looking at. Sampson County and Wilson County use a flat amount. They don't go on a percentage. They give a flat amount based on years of service, so it's all over the board. When we factored all that out on the percentages, they're right around the 7 to 9% areas. So we're right within the neighborhood. Also on that list, you'll see the extra duty. I apologize, I skipped over one, I'll come back. The Student Device Initiative. There was discussion, I believe it was Lenoir County went to a 1-to-1 device. That figure over the 5-year period would be to go a 1-to-1 device for every one of our students. I would like to pause here and mention the commissioners, you were gracious enough to fund our technology initiative last year. It was a 5-year rollout. We're in year 2. We're not ready, even if we put a 1-to-1 computer in every student's hands, our buildings are not up to the capability to handle that at this time. We're close, and Dr. Lewis could answer questions. I believe our high schools are all ready. The middle schools they're working on, but we're just now starting out into the elementary schools to get them up where we need to be. Part of that is, and again, is the, excuse me, the continuum maintenance and rollover as the systems wear out. The next piece on that is the extra duty supplement. I believe Mr. Cromartie had asked what that would be, and we went across the system of all of our extra duty at our average teacher rate, and that's what that would equate to if we paid them rather than traded off time. The last thing on that list is our paving costs. As most of you are aware, our capital building are in disrepair. I'm not going to blow smoke to anybody. I think you're aware of that. The school system let a lot of those go into repairs. I don't think the money that you have been providing was used very well in those areas. Paving is a huge capital outlay for us. So in speaking with Mr. Wood, we looked at that over a 5-year period of getting where we need to be, and then we can do it each year within what the normal appropriation is, do those upgrades and painting and lining of the parking lots or top coating where needed. So as you look down this, one thing I would draw your attention, the textbooks and the student devices. More than likely there's going to be a combination thereof. It's not that we can go all textbooks or all devices. As most of you are hearing from your constituents, my generation and probably most of folks of our age are used to textbooks. So when the children are bringing work home, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa want to see those textbooks to help them. The kids want the computers. One of the things we're really struggling with, once you have the computers, you have to buy the software. So what we run into with the software is with the textbooks. It's constantly changing, so every year they're changing what you have, so you have to upgrade and buy new, which is an inherent rather large cost. So it's probably going to be a combination thereof. I'm sure you've been reading in the newspapers the General Assembly is taking a hard look at textbooks and the use of that. They're taking a hard look at technology. The other thing that I'm really encouraged at, they're looking at a bond initiative specifically for school construction and repairs, and primarily the ages of the buildings and high needs counties and high needs systems, which we would qualify for those areas. So if that comes through, there is a possibility that we would have access to some funding there for projects in the schools and the paving projects.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I was at the meeting when we had the joint meeting, and the classroom textbooks that came up. My view was, when I was for the classroom textbooks, is that my idea was that students that didn't have access to an iPad and or broadband would be the only ones that we might consider textbooks. And my question is the $5 million that you have here, is that putting a textbook in every student's hand?
That's putting a textbook in every student's hand, yes.
Okay.
So and you're exactly right, Mr. Mayo. I think it has to be a blending of the two, because a lot of kids aren't going to use the textbook. There are a lot that will. And you know, I don't want to purchase and put that kind of money into something if they're just going to sit in the shelf.
Right. Thank you.
Got a question? I know you do.
I didn't have my eggs this morning. Mr. Chairman, if I could ask. I feel like someone that opened up Pandora's box here. In our joint meeting, I was simply trying to open up the possibility of rather spending dollars on textbooks that is supposedly coming from the state. The state is supposed to, I thought, provide the funding for textbooks. Is there a way that we could get a grant or something similar to what Lenoir County had, evidently, to where they had devices and e-books provided to their students? I come here today, though, and see that that it appears to me like you are asking the county to provide those dollars for those ebooks. And I just don't see how the county can possibly provide that type of funding.
Mr. Daugherty, I'm not asking for that. I am providing the information that was requested. I realize the
You're making
numbers
me feel better
I
already.
realize the numbers that are out there, and I'm not sitting before you saying, write a check to the school system for all these items. That would be, if you want to call this a wish list. In the case of Lenore, is there money out there for that? Absolutely. Golden Leaf, Mr. Wood and Dr. Lewis and I, we applied for the Golden Leaf grants last year. We were turned down. We were turned down because our infrastructure was not capable of handling it.
Okay.
Golden Leaf will give you the money for the devices. But they said, we're not giving you money for devices because you can't use them. So that was why we started out rolling out that technology plan for that. I agree with you, the state should be providing textbooks. I think public education's in a real flux right now, whether we do textbooks, whether we go all technology, where it's a blending of how we look at that. These are merely, if you wanted to go that whole, if I had to prioritize that list, I think the teacher supplements are a huge need for us right now based on the number of teacher shortages, the increase in the need for teachers because of the lowering of the class size. I think the paving costs are very, very high priority. The student device initiative, as I said, we're not really ready for that. We know where we're at with the technology plan. We've been working on how we're going to get those devices in our students' hands and maybe blend that with bringing your own device, because we know all of our kids are carrying cell phones and can access those types of things. And as I said with the textbooks, and every day we talk, there's going to be a blending of that. I think our General Assembly has to have some say in this, because technically they need to be providing that funding.
Well, if I could, again, going rambling on here, but I'm trying to think outside the box. What can we do to speed the process up, that we have the technology in our schools, that we can go for the grant so that we can have devices? Not all students would have devices, but to have devices available to a large majority of our students. What do we need to do to push this plant up, technology plant up, so that we can get our schools capable?
I'll let Dr. Lewis
Okay.
speak to that, but you've already done that in funding the technology plan, but it was spread out over 5 years. We're already letting students bring their own device into the schools, at the high schools, and accessing that wireless.
But Dr. Dunsmore, I'm an impatient person.
I understand
When you
that,
talk
but
about
Dr.
5
Lewis-
years, I want you to think about this a minute. For 5 years, that's 5 graduations or people, students that are going through our school. What can we do to shorten that period of time? That's what I'm asking.
This school year was spent doing.
You may want to come up to the microphone if you would.
This school year was spent implementing year one of that technology plan, and that included infrastructure work at most of our middle schools and all of our high schools. We will now be in a position for them to do BYOD starting next year. We'll also be in a position with some of the budget funds we've set aside for student devices to start providing some devices at the middle and high school level next year. It won't be nearly at the ratio we'd like. We won't be able to afford 1-to-1 or even 1-to-3. But we will use the money we have left in our technology budget to start purchasing devices for those schools whose infrastructure can handle them. Year two, those same infrastructure upgrades that we just did at most of our middle schools and high schools will be done at our remaining elementary schools. Okay, so by the end of year two, infrastructure will no longer be an issue, and we'll be on a track to start spending money on student devices.
And Dr. Dunsmore, back to the grant. With the fact that we have our high schools and our middle schools technology ready, can we not seek a grant for high school and?
Yeah, this next cycle with Golden Leaf, we are most certainly going to be applying for that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they were pretty explicit on why we didn't get it the last time, so we know where we're at and how we can craft that.
So you're on track within 2 years to really have the schools
We-
up for the technology?
We believe we have a good plan in place, and we're working that plan. We're on schedule. Okay, the other thing that got done this year that had to be done first was an upgrade to teacher and student desktop machines. Those machines, I think I remember telling you guys, were in some cases 10 and 12 years old. They had to go. Okay, so that had to be a priority over what now becomes an add-on, which is a student device, we'll be in better position moving forward to provide student devices. If you'll remember as well, the funds that you guys committed to over the next 5 or 6 years were sort of a graduated. You gave us $750,000 to jumpstart us. That was fantastic. Next year, we're expecting only $300,000. The year after that, $450,000, and then after that, $600,000. So we've made our plans based on taking some of that $750,000 and setting it aside so that we can level spending over the 5 years and not have to have dips in spending, even though we're anticipating a little bit of a dip in funding as y'all kind of roll us into having a sustainable fund that we can count on, and we appreciate that, but we've tried to budget in a manner that's level and predictable.
I think that clarifies a great deal. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dunsmore, if memory and what I've heard serves me right, based upon the state funds that you now get for textbooks, there's a certain allotment goes to every school, and then they can buy some textbooks every year. Is that?
Yeah, essentially, it is the sets in the tested areas. We try to upgrade, roll out.
Most critical?
Yes,
Okay.
in the most critical areas. So we do that based on the student numbers, so it's equitably spread across all the schools.
And I realized, and just to go back, I realized when we were discussing textbooks over at your site a couple of months ago, I probably felt that once we got to the time when we would vote on the money, it may not be exactly the way that we philosophically thought about it that day. But I do find it interesting and admirable that you all have a plan to blend this. Now, my good colleague, Mr. Doris, said that he's an impatient man, and he is. But impatience also works in many ways. I would be impatient to feel like that it would take us only until we could be sure we were going to get a grant to put the necessary devices, all the textbooks in the hands of the children. And while the $5 million may be out of reach, I want to make sure that we are moving in the direction of some blend, because once this is written in the newspaper and a good number of our colleagues out there get the impression that we're not going to do anything for textbooks because we're waiting on a grant, there's a certain number of parents that's going to be dissatisfied with that conversation, because I'll be honest with you, a lot of the homework is being done by grandparents who look like me, who are accustomed to having some kind of textbook to help the child. And I'll be honest with you, I was sitting at the table yesterday with my grandson, and he was on my laptop that I have, and he was playing a math game. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I couldn't really focus. I couldn't help him as much as I thought I could if I'd had a textbook that had the same information in it. So I'm telling you, all the technology is good, but we're gonna have to have a good blend of textbooks and workbooks that's easy enough for people who sort of look like me to help their grandchildren, and parents who does not have a great grasp of technology.
And one of that's an excellent point, Mr. Cromartie, and one of the things that we've been looking very hard at is, what would that number of textbooks be, whether we call it a classroom set or a number of volumes, that if you have a student, say your grandson in that case, he knows he wants one, he can sign that textbook out every day. But not everybody in the class may want that. So instead of having maybe 30 books, we may only need 10 or 15. So that's another area we're looking at, how we don't waste the money.
Right.
And get the most bang for the buck, and get it in those hands that have the help at home, and as well as the need of the students.
I want to throw in one thing too, if you don't mind. What he's given you is a 5-year cycle on those textbooks. I want y'all to understand that's a 5-year cycle. In other words, you have a tremendous upfront cost of $5 million. and then it's $1 million a year, because some of them get updated. But then you start over in year 6, is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
So I wanted you to understand, that's $9 million every 5 years, if you went strictly textbooks. And that's the takeaway from that, I wanted you to fully understand versus going with the devices and getting onto the broadband as quickly as we can and making that transition. Because we do think, even though that would be expensive, that is a cheaper option than these textbooks, which get obsolete pretty quick.
I was gonna say, I like the blend, because just like you said, the up cost, up for the textbooks at $5 million is huge. If you went and bought devices for everybody at the same time, and or even if you got the grant from somewhere, those devices are gonna be dead in 5 years, and you're gonna be facing the same issue over again. If you don't keep a blend, it's the only way you're gonna be able to afford it in the near term, I think. And
Well,
I like
regardless
the
of
way, I
what we
like your
do, we
plan.
have to sustain.
And Bill, you bring up another good point, and that is you really need to use, as much as possible, use the devices these kids bring. They're bringing them anyway.
Yeah.
And then you just supplement the ones that parents cannot afford to have an ongoing plan for them or something like that. That cuts your cost dramatically and will allow us to do more for all of our children. There's no need to provide a device for a child that's got something in his pocket that's every bit as good or better than what we would provide for him.
Good point.
On that point there, have we done any questions or surveys or finding out how many high school students, as an example, would in fact have devices that they could bring?
We are working right now with a company that is putting that survey work together for us, and we're gonna roll out over this year so we can have that hard data. We're just estimating now at the high school level, if you go at any lunchtime and walk into the cafeteria, it's quiet, because every kid has their phone out.
Sure.
And they're looking at their phone. So we know they're being used. So we're crafting those surveys now so we can get the hard data. And as we start blending that, as I said, we know what the total number is, but I honestly will tell you that's not realistic, because once we start blending and who needs and what doesn't need, we need to have that hard data. So we're hoping to have that by Christmas.
So we could, in fact, be in a situation to where 70% of our high school students already have a laptop or whatever. It's just a matter of us providing the ebook registration,
Yes.
where they just would sign on with their device to have the books. And that would dramatically cut our cost. I mean, I would look at that more or less from a standpoint that you would phase in high school first and then move down to middle
That's our
school.
plan.
And it may be not being a $5 million problem, it may be a $1 million problem. But we need those numbers.
Yes, we realize that, and we can't estimate that, and so we are working right now to get that information.
Great,
back.
great.
Because I think you can see that, as Dr. Lewis said, with the extra money you're doing this year, their plan is to then have everything wired at the elementary. Then they'll have the survey in December, so when you're sitting here next year, you should be ready to move forward with it.
And just as food for thought, you talked about numbers based on what we hear back from the kids and what they're already in position to provide. If we only have to supplement at a ratio of 1 device for every 3 kids, okay, so that assumes that 2/3 of kids have something that they can use for the same purpose, then the total cost of that would be around $2.38 million. Okay, now we would spread that out over time, and so then spread out over 5 years, you're talking about a little less than $500,000 a year, and that's if we have to pay full retail for the devices. We won't. We'll get a discount for bulk purchasing, okay? If only 1/3 of our students are able to provide their own devices that they can use, then that number would basically be about $1 million a year over the 5 years if we have to pay full retail, which we won't. Okay, so just kind of think in those terms.
Dr. Lewis,
Yes, sir.
that's the dollar figure that I was wanting somebody to come up with, because I'm reading it loud and clear, and that makes excellent, that makes excellent sense, because I'm almost, as I have been around our county manager long enough, I know that he had the Plan B and Plan C down in there somewhere, and Dr. Dunsmore, it's admirable that we could look at the $5 million figure, but the one that we need to get to keep us moving forward, Dr. Lewis, is the one that I'm interested in. And just to add, and I know you did some prioritize, you said if you could prioritize. If I looked at this list and prioritize, I guess it's because I've been beating this drum for the last, I don't know how many years. The extra duty supplement is one of the things that I want not to be prioritized too far down the list, because teachers who do extra duty at schools are the ones that are the backbone to children enjoying some stuff. And so I want.
And just in informal surveying of a lot of those teachers and a lot of the principals, the staff would rather have the compensatory leave time rather than the pay. So what they do now, they work a deal with the principal. If you work the gates, you can have, and that's what they want.
That's good.
But make it an option.
Yes.
If the person wants the money, I want them to get the money. If they and it's because I know the whole world knows that it's getting harder and harder to get teacher substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the market is not quite what it used to be, is what I hear, and so I would love teachers to have an option and say, well, I don't want the time off. I've got another option for that, and it's just my background is that I want the money in my pocket if I can get it in my pocket, and I'll decide later on the other parts.
That's what I understand.
Mr. Belton, Mr. Aycock.
Yes, Dr. Dunsmore, that teacher, Board of Education workshop with the county commissioners, I recorded the whole program, what the commissioner said, and at appropriate time, I'm going to play that back after this discussion is over. Listen to all the promises that we made and all the questions. So shouldn't be too many questions today.
Well, and I also understand, Mr. Bill, if we hit the lottery and had an unlimited budget, this would be our wish list. We know that. It's exactly what it is a wish list. I think we have to get the accurate data that you can make your informed decisions and keep us, as I believe Mr. Dougherty said, moving forward.
Dr. Dunsmore made a statement just a few minutes ago that kind of hit a nerve with me. I'm old school. I hate surveys. I don't understand why, and then Dr. Lewis stood up and said that he basically had the figures. I can't understand why we've got to spend good money on surveys when you don't have homerooms anymore. Or, I can't imagine why y'all can't get the information on what a student has. Am I?
Well, what Dr. Lewis is giving you is where we're at on that. We just need to drill down and make sure we know for sure. One of the things we do know, the older the students get, the more apprehensive what they are to ask for free and reduced lunches, because that could be one of our indicators of who would get a device if you qualified for a free and reduced lunch. But we know a lot of students, just based on pride, don't apply for it. So there are some other data points that we just need to get so it's as accurate as possible.
Okay, well, I guess this is the pot calling the kettle black, because everything we do, we have to get somebody to tell us what we need. And I just feel like sometimes we're throwing good money down the drain.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Yes, sir, Mr.
Bill, I did want to just talk briefly. If y'all would go to your books on the page, it's not page, but tab 185, it says WC Schools CD fund.
That'd be in this big recommended budget.
Oh, I see it, with the yellow tab there.
I'm going to go through the formula with you.
We're gonna have to get bigger desks.
Yellow, it's a yellow tab.
Yellow tab?
Yeah, you'll see a big yellow tab.
No, not that book, the
other book.
the other book over there.
The other book.
Yep, the other book. Not,
Got three of them, yeah.
no,
It's
where's
the
your
actual
book?
the budget itself.
Well, you don't have a book.
I don't have a book.
No, you have a book.
You got three of them.
Where's your,
You
where's
got your hand
your?
on it right now. He's got his hand on it right now.
Recommended budget.
That's it right there. See the yellow tab?
Recommended budget. Here it is. I got
He does not have.
I don't have what you.
Oh,
Carol,
Ed doesn't have a book.
it does not have a budget, recommended budget book.
Dr. Elmore was going to go back to his meeting, but I just wanted to have some comment on the formula.
Yeah, and if I could, for the good of the board, Mr. Wood last year came up with a formula so we can project each year what our budget's going to be. And for that planning, we do thank you for that and the hard work that Mr. Wood put into that. And as somebody set up their options B, C, and I think we've even been down to D and E. But it is very much appreciative of our end. We have tried to be as transparent with the money. Spring Creek's roof, thank goodness, now with this rain is on. We know we have to put one on the Goldsboro Middle School as we're moving forward on these big ticket prices or items. We can plan that and assure that we use that money in the best way possible. So I do thank you for that, and we appreciate that formula and the hard work that Mr. Wood does.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for having us again, and we appreciate all you do.
All right, thank you. Walk easy now.
Hey. They keep telling me better days are coming.
Yeah, that's what they've been telling me.
You can have your chair back later.
And George, while they're going out, and before we move on, Craig, would you introduce our new person over
I
here?
was getting ready to do that.
Oh, you gonna do it? Okay.
But you go ahead.
Okay, do want to introduce, this is Trey Hinton. Trey is from here in Goldsboro. Trey is a rising junior at Liberty University. And Trey will be our intern this summer. And he is the best kind of intern, which is a free intern. And so we're very pleased to have him. He's going to be hanging around with me and attending a lot of meetings, but also he's going to work with James Wade in helping James with some policies and procedures and some of the legal work for MRAC. So we're excited to have Trey here, and so hopefully you'll be seeing a lot of him. So we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Trey got a really good orientation yesterday. He attended an hour and a half Department of Social Services meeting, so he really got a good recipe yesterday. So glad that you
And Trey, they feed you everywhere you go, so you've been putting on some weight this summer.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could ask on this, is this common? Do we generally have summer interns that students that come in to kind of learn how government operates and so forth?
We do some
or-
of it,
To my knowledge, I think this is the first time this has been
Yeah.
done, and that's.
well, we had a request to do it, and the more we looked into it, we said, it makes a lot of sense. It's a good experience for him. It's some help to us.
Well, I think going forward, I think it's something we need to reach out to our college students to involve them on a summer basis. I think it's a great idea and a great program.
Great.
Hopefully, we'll continue it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I can continue on the Board of Education, since they were just here, has everybody got that page? That is the formula. If you go past the first page, past the fold, well, it's the second one, actually. You have a write-up on the schools and how we do it. This formula looks a whole lot more complicated than it is. What we do is we start off with the total revenues and fund balance appropriated in the original budget. I want to stress that we go back to the original budget. And the reason is because we decide what they're going to get each year at the time of the original budget. It's based on those assumptions of what the revenues will be, okay? So you look at the original budget, FY18 recommended is 85.9, and y'all will see that's down somewhat, but that's because the fund balance is in there. Okay, deductions of revenues that are earmarked. The reason we deduct all of these things is because you cannot share those with the Board of Education. In other words, we're trying to get down to what's the growth in revenues that you had that are available to share with the Board of Education. So you've got to take out stuff like DSS, public health, grants, anything like that. So if you'll see, we just go down it real quick. We deduct for the school resource officers, Governor's Highway Safety, one NC fund grants, wages grant, U.S. Department of Justice Drug Task Force grant, and the list goes on and on there as to what we deduct, and we deduct it from both of them. So you go on down there, and then you get deductions. These are for various things we support: deduction for literacy, connection, salary reimbursement, soil and water, register of deeds, conveyance taxes, because those are paid to the state, register of deeds fees to state, garnishments, concealed weapons fees, fingerprinting, sheriff's office donations. The list goes on and on. And then we take out the Eastern Region loan repayments from municipalities, the fire department, radio system reimbursements, Board of Education, the local option sales taxes. We do not give them any of that because there's a statutory split, as y'all remember. 30% of one and 60% of the other goes to them for capital outlay. Does everybody recall that? And debt service on schools. So, and then we take the appropriated fund balance out. Now, 18 does not have any fund balance in it because at the time we did this, which is early March, our agreement with Dr. Dunsmore is I'll have this to him by March 1 of each year. So at that point, I have no idea what fund balance we're going to use. So we leave it blank, but you take it off on the other side. And so basically what that gets you to is the original budget in 17 was 58,029,787. The recommended is 59,057,093. That's the adjusted revenues when you take out the non-earmarked, when you take out the earmarked portions. So then all we do is simply subtract the old year from the new. There was growth of $1,027,306. We divide that, and that turns out to be a revenue growth rate of 1.77%. Everybody's following that? If you remember, our policy puts a 2% cap on that growth. So I keep that in the formula. In this case, it did not apply. Then what we took is the last line, $20,357,123 was budgeted for current expenses in 2017. And you don't include capital outlay because that's not, that $2 million comes off of the sales tax and lottery money every year. And then we had to deduct the $600,000 because remember that was a one-time additional amount for technology last year. Remember we gave them $750,000. 150 was the first year of that 150 for 4 years to get them up to the $600,000 they were talking about. Does everybody recall that? So I had to adjust what they got last year back down by $600,000. When you do the math on the 1.77% on the growth, it's $349,762 is what they would get. And so that number is thrown in there. It's added to the $19,757,123. And so their appropriation for the coming year is $20,106,885. Again, that's actually down a little bit, but it's because you gave them that $600,000 boost last year. So I've gone over this with Dr. Dunsmore and with Mike Hayes, as finance director, and they're in agreement with it that's the number we want to recommend to you. This is basically the formula we used last year. Last year we had enough growth that the 2% cap kicked in. And so last year I believe they got 387,000. And so this year it'd be 349.7, so right at 350. Does anybody have any questions on the formula or what we're proposing to you? This is what's in the budget, not the 5 million and all the other numbers. That was what he was giving you there is a look at where some of the stuff we need to get to, but mainly the discussion on textbooks versus technology. But they do need to start putting some money into repaving some of their parking lots, just as we're doing. We're doing some. In fact, you'll notice we did the one across the street here this past Saturday. We did the small one over on this side as well. But we're doing a few each year, and that's what I encouraged him to do, is just do a few each year and spread it out. So, but the biggest thing, I think, out of that wish list that he presented, along with the technology, is the teacher supplements. When you look at where we're at relative to some of our neighboring counties, that becomes an issue. One thing I did want to stress to you is Dr. Dunsmore has done away with, except for some carryovers where they've already, they'll have to wash out of the system, but they do not do them for people other than classroom teachers now. So, and I know that's been a bone of contention in the past, but I wanted y'all to know he's done that. He can't do away with them where people already have them, but that's a very small number, and they're working that down as those people attrit out. So,
Mr. Chairman, am I looking at this correctly? It looks like the estimated appropriation for 2018, the $20,106,000, it's almost the same or less. Well, it's a little bit less than the fiscal year 2017, right?
because of the $600,000 one-time shot in the arm you gave them last year.
Well, my point is that we don't have a real drastic increase, but we do have an increase. But because of the 600,000, we're pretty well level as to what we're budgeting.
That's correct, for
Okay.
them.
Okay, thank you.
But you're gonna spend that in other places.
Well,
I suppose the only question I have is to Mr. Honeycutt. Are you familiar with this formula
Yes, sir.
going forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very
that's-
much so.
I think that's the big question that I would have.
Very much so, and it is an excellent tool to use. That the expectations, the biggest issues I've always had has been the fighting with the school board on an annual basis. And if you get a formula where everybody can agree to up front, and it's got growth already built in, and it's fair to both sides, it makes it.
Oh, it's a big thing. I mean,
much easier budget process, and I applaud George and the board for working on such a very comprehensive formula.
and the second question that I would have is, then you all have talked with the superintendent, and he isn't agreeing to this figure. He just wanted to present a wish list going forward.
Yeah, that's right. What he was presenting to you was kind of a comprehensive list of what's still out there. And as y'all know, the issue was textbooks versus technology, and that was a big driver of it. The teacher supplements is a big issue. Ed's issue about pay for, I guess, extra duty. Paving for the parking lots and all of that. So what he wanted to show you was where we need to get to. And one of the issues going forward that y'all are gonna have in future years is how to do those supplements. You know, he originally was looking at 1% a year, and you simply, that's out of reach, in my view. But maybe half a percent, maybe a third of a percent. But you do need to be, in my view, you do need to be working towards that, because, you know, if we don't keep up with what our neighbors are doing, it's kind of like the problem we've had with DSS and public health. You know, they're going to, you know, you run the risk, your better people are going to go elsewhere.
Well, and you're bringing up a point, because he did say that was top priority, would be
Right.
the teacher supplement. We are, from what I'm seeing here, in our county at 6.5%.
That's right.
Whereas the neighboring counties are in the 9, 10, and 11% range.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah. And that's why I think you need to be migrating that way. But
Well-
it's something you've got to work on. You can't bite that elephant off in 1 year.
The confusion, though, is that he's got up here teacher supplements at 1% costing $650,000. But yet in his write-up, he is basically requesting a 0.5% increase. So I assume if we are looking at a 0.5% increase, we're looking at $325,000 stepping up
Yeah.
over a period of time. Am
And that's what I
correct?
think you need to do.
Well, then my last question on this is, did you recommend in any of this budget that we provide that?
No, because we need to go through the rest of the budget and let you see where we're at on everything else. If you want to do that, you can certainly do that, but I'd like you to look.
But it is not in your recommended
It's
budget.
not in the recommended budget. What's in the budget is this $349,000.
Okay.
And so, but I did want to have this discussion with you, because I do think going forward, we do need to pay attention to the supplements, because we are behind relative to our neighbors. It does impact their ability to recruit, but also to retain. And one of our problems is, and I don't, and he's fully aware that we can't match Johnston County, but the problem you have, and I've had it in other jurisdictions where I was near a larger metropolitan area, is Johnston County loses people to Wake. And that's why they've done what they've done. And then what happens is, then the sucking sound is that we lose people to Johnston County. If we're at 6.5% and they're at, what was it, a 12 or 13, I think? That, you know, that's a lot of money on a teacher's salary.
This is just a curiosity question. Where do you think, where did they reach to get, what pocket of resources did they reach to get that, where we at 6.5 and they're at 12? I mean,
Well, what I'm
do you
hoping
think
is
they
gonna
reached to
happen,
get
Ed,
that?
is this is a tight year. As I go through the revenues with you, our property taxes are tight, our sales tax is tight this year. But then I look for it to go back to normal. When that happens, as you have more growth, hopefully you can give them more. But ultimately, the supplements are all local money. So everybody needs to understand that. That's not coming from the state. That's us.
My question was, where does Johnston County reach to get there?
They're getting it from local money.
Local money.
They have to.
Local sales tax is better, local.
It's,
Property
well, the
tax
two
is one.
biggest sources of revenue for counties is the property tax and sales tax. So that's probably where it's coming from.
Ms. Girl.
This wish list is kind of a shock and awe. And I think if we comment about, we've got to go through the rest of the budget before we can tackle this monster. The one I do see with interest is the teacher supplement. And I think based on affordability, we should reward our good teachers. So I guess my question back to the Board of Education, if we invest, and I prefer to do it annually, not set up a 5-year plan, but
Right.
annual based on affordability. As we invest, what benchmarks are going to put in place for our investment? What's the return on investment, I guess?
Well, and that's, you know, and that's the discussion y'all want to have with them.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to elevate the teachers, and we should, and reward the good teachers, but I like to see some return on the student scores and
Right.
the school scores.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could try to wrap up this, but last night I'm sitting there, and my daughter, who is a teacher from Wake County, was there visiting, and in that I got an email, and in the email you all got it as well, where there is an opening at Animal Control. And I opened the email to find out that we have listed a position for animal control at a salary of $17.50 per hour. And my daughter turned to me and says, I want you to think about that just a minute. I get paid $37,000 a year with a master's degree, and you're going to pay an animal control officer $34,000 a year with no degree. Now, that kind of puts things in perspective.
But that was the high end, though.
Well, it was,
So-
and undoubtedly, I knew she was making her
Yeah.
arguments and such, but it is something we need to keep in mind, and that is, if we're going to attract teachers, we're going to have to increase our salary.
Yeah.
We're going to.
Well, and that was the purpose on giving you that snapshot of, you know, if you think about it, what Dr. Dunsmore has done is, in the time he's been here, he's given you a very clear idea of where we are technologically, and he's developed a good technology plan. To your credit, you have jump-started that in the past year. You have a plan to get that in place. This will be the second of those 4 years where we'll soon have them up to 600,000 every year going into technology. So he's done that. You've gone over the capital outlay, and you've addressed that. And what he's looking at now, what he's telling you about now is some of what really are the key operational issues that they have going forward, the big ticket items.
I was going, now what you just did, I was going to comment on what he said. I've been living with a school teacher for 37 years.
So you hear it all.
I've heard this argument many, many times before, and it's a valid argument. But we're better than some counties. When I had her teaching in Jones County, I mean, I think she got 50 votes or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. But your school system they're the largest employer in the county, aren't they? So it would be.
They're the third largest.
Okay, but it'd be a
Third largest
tremendous
employer.
cost
Yeah,
to do that. It's not because they're not smart people, because they are.
no.
It's a losing battle.
And it's a big,
But I tell you that.
well, it's a big ticket item,
I learned
and
that
that's
last
why
night.
I'm cautioning you to do basically what Joe has talked about, is let's go through everything else, see where we're at. And then y'all, you know, you can address it however you deem fit this year, but I did not put anything in for this year,
Mr. May, you got a comment?
anything new.
Yeah, you mentioned looking at it from a teacher standpoint. I guess I'll go on the flip side and say what most, not all, but most citizens think when you talk about teachers. First of all, the first thing they bring up is, and I'm gonna ask this question, you don't have to answer, but as compared to an animal control officer, how many days does a teacher have off a year versus an animal control officer? That's what the citizens ask me every time it comes up about teacher pay. Most of them have the idea that a teacher full-time works 9 months a year during the school year. I know that some do things during the summer, but that's what I hear from the public. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the perception of what's out there. So, yeah, you can look at how much a person's getting paid a year in animal control, but again, how many days does this person get off per year versus school teacher?
Well, again, I think that's something I would leave for Dr. Dunsmore to discuss with you. I do know a lot of teachers go back, get certifications, recertifications.
Yeah.
They're also working on their higher degrees and that sort of thing.
Right.
But I'm not qualified to get into that discussion.
But do they get paid, maybe what we need to look at the county, if a teacher gets paid to go to school during the summer, the increase, do they get paid their regular salary when they go? Maybe we need to do that.
I don't think so. I think they have an annual contract, don't they, Ed?
Okay, so
That's
additional schooling shouldn't be part of the total pay that the teachers get. Is that correct?
I'm just talking about the amount of time that they put in.
I understand.
You were talking about the time they're off.
Yeah.
I wasn't referring to the dollar figure. I was
Right.
referring to the time invested in
Yeah.
their certifications. and things like that.
Right, I'm not saying anything against what's happening here, don't get me wrong. I'm just giving a perspective of what most citizens, when you talk to them about teachers and teachers' pay. So I think this communication is gonna be key too.
It is, and my advice would be, is once again, as we have these joint meetings, as y'all discuss this, all of that needs to be put out on the table so
Yeah.
that everybody clearly understands it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Bill mentioned the fact that he had been sleeping with a teacher for 37 years.
I didn't say that.
Oh, he did say living with him.
I can't wait to tell them you said.
And
You woke us up this morning.
so I think I'm up to about because mine won't stop and come home. I'm up to about 42 or 3 years practicing the same thing. But I don't, and this is not to disparage the animal control, but if you look at the total amount of hours, not the days of the, not the calendar time, but the minutes of the whole year, teachers put a lot of time in that everyone else is already going to the golf match or doing something else. There's an enormous amount of time spent getting ready to teach the child, things done at home, getting ready for the next day. So anyone who's really been involved in this whole education piece all your life, you know that it just doesn't start at 7:30 and end at 3:15. There's a whole long list of things. And my passion about the extra duty supplement is that I, along with a lot of other folk, have spent enormous hours at school doing functions that made it possible for the parents, the animal control guy, whomever else, to go do something else, because their children are at school at an activity that's being done for free by the teacher. So I just want to toss that little bit in. You have to look at the whole picture, the whole day, all the minutes in a day, to really evaluate whether somebody's underpaid or overpaid. So I just want to toss that piece in there. Teachers spend a lot of time, extra duty and homework, all the things it takes to make the next day possible to be done. So,
Mr. Chairman,
that's all.
what I'd like to suggest to the commissioners or anybody else that talk to you about teachers, work schedules and how they work, and I do it all the time, go visit the schools and sit in the classroom all day and watch what they do and the type of kids that some of them have to work with, and the headaches and the abuse and all that stuff that you get from, I have a teacher that go to my church, had a second grader last year that kind of stepped out of line, and she just took him by the arm and kind of moved him back over to the line. He looked up at her, he said, "Oh, the pistol whip you." I mean, that's just a little thing. Of course, Bill knows this, he gets it all the time. Teachers have a hard job.
They honestly do. In the interest of time, and I know you're about ready to move on, I think we need about a 10-minute break.
Absolutely.
Something. Okay, we're back in session. Back to you.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and start our presentation of the 2018 budget. Before I start, I just want to thank our staff. And Craig has been a great addition to our staff and has worked with us on the budget as well. But Allison and Janice, the two ladies over here, do the bulk of the work. So I just want to acknowledge their job.
Mr. Wood, before we go any further, didn't we discuss the other day we might need a closed session today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to do that at the end, unless y'all want to do it now.
No, we'll do it. Let's go ahead and
Okay.
let's get through this.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question I'd like to ask before we
Yes.
start. Are you submitting a balanced budget to us?
Yes, it uses some fund balance, but it's balanced, yes.
So I was just wondering, in the interest of time and everything, if it's balanced.
Somehow I knew you were gonna do that, Mr. Bell.
Yeah.
Move on, Mr. Wood.
I didn't hear the motion.
Okay. Well, what I want to do today is just give you a broad overview, and after this, as y'all know, we'll have a work session on the 30th, and that one begins at 9 a.m. because we have the agenda committee has to meet at 8 and work up the agenda. But we'll be meeting at 9, and that'll go over all these internal departments. Later today, we're going to do the outside agencies after I give you this presentation. So that will be that'll be part of this work session today. Also, at the end of this, I want to add something from DSS, which they discussed at their board meeting. I believe that was yesterday. Is that right, Ray? Yeah. And so we'll go over that as well. But also, the director will be over here on the 30th to give you an in-depth presentation on that. Okay. So then we'll have the public hearing on the 6th, and then the adoption on the 20th. And of course, you can have as many work sessions as you want. up until the time you vote on it, which is the 20th. So you should have 3 documents before you: the operating budget, which is the big book, a 5-year capital improvements plan, and then we had already given you the outside agency books at the previous meeting. The county will operate with 26 funds as listed in the Reader's Guide, and you have a tab there that says Reader's Guide to the Budget. If you want to look at that real quick, it discusses the funds. But more importantly, on the second page, that is a list of the funds. And you'll notice that we have one new one, the Street Assessment Fund. That is for the Canterbury Road, North Creek subdivision.
By the way, congratulations on a great bid.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take full credit.
Well, Joe, I thought your comment was well made about, the original DOT thing was 3 million. This thing came in at 1.6, below 1.6. So,
Have you checked it out yet to make sure everything's good?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
yeah. So we'll be starting that project very quickly, just as soon as we can. We will have it on your agenda, obviously, for Tuesday to vote on, so we can get going on it. Okay, so those are the 26 funds. I would encourage you, I know you guys have had several of my budgets, you're probably bored with them, but I would encourage you to just read that Reader's Guide before you start one more time, because it does lay out how our fund structure is set up. So you have that. The budget format has an explanation for each fund's purpose and the major changes affecting it. So with each one of the funds, and I'll go through those briefly with you later, you'll have a write-up that explains what does this fund cover, so that everybody fully understands where everything you're looking for in the budget is, okay? In the general fund, of course, there's so many departments there. We have a summary spreadsheet showing the revenues and expenditures. And then what I'd like to do is go to that now. And if you look behind the various tabs, you've got several tabs, but if you'll go ahead to the general fund, it's the first blue tab. Everybody see that? Yeah. One thing I want to stress there, Wayne County does something a little unique. It took me a little while to get used to it, but Pam had set this up, and after I looked at it, I felt like it made a lot of sense. What we have done here is you have 11 subsidiary general funds, and they're listed here. It's the Court Facilities Fund, County Sales Tax, Senior Citizens 4-H, QSCAP Sinking Fund, Wayne Community College Revaluation Fund, DSS, Public Health, and then the 2 school funds. And you may say, well, why do you have those as separate funds? We need to segregate that money for different reports that we do, and to verify that we've spent some restricted money, like that court facilities money has to be spent on certain things. So what she does is she keeps those separate in these 11 funds. Now, at the end of the year, when you get your audit, those are subsumed into the general fund, the revenues and expenditures there. And on the general fund balance sheet, they will show, for instance, if we didn't spend all the revaluation money that year, you'll see a reserve for that, and there'll be an amount on the balance sheet that says this is reserved for the revaluation, okay? So I wanted you to know that, because it's a little confusing to people when they read the audit, because if you're looking for these funds, they're actually in the general fund at that point. But it makes sense to keep them separated, because it actually saves the staff time in preparing these various reports and everything. Allison, is there anything you'd like to say about that? No, sir. Have we pretty well covered it? Okay. So when you're looking at the general fund and those 11 subsidiary funds, that is overall the general fund. And that's where the bulk of the money is in our budget. Okay. If you look at the next page, Not going through this line by line, but I do want to point out the two major things, and that's property taxes. They're only growing by about 1% this year. And so that is not our normal growth rate. And so that has hurt us in terms of the money we have available for this year's budget, and that's one of the big issues. Second thing is the sales tax also has not grown. It's actually gone down a little bit, and that's because, if you remember, we had to make some estimates last year on when they adjusted some of the sales taxes. So it has not come in as high as we thought it would. And so what we're doing is correcting for that in this year. And then going forward, you should be back on the normal trend, which is usually more growth than that. Okay. Now, we are showing the sales tax growing at about 2%, but it's 2% on what we're getting in now. It's not, and we didn't get in this year what we projected. So that's why this shows us a -1. Those are the two main things I wanted to go over. If you'll notice, those are a large portion of your budget, your overall budget. Before we get into an overview of each fund, I want to discuss some of the key points that affect the entire budget. So what I'd like to do now is back up to the budget message. And it's further back here. You'll see it's the first tab. It says County Manager's Budget Message. Statutorily, we're supposed to give you an overview of the major issues facing the county, so that's what I've tried to do. What I also try to do in each budget is I want to give you the major assumptions that we've used in putting this budget together, so that way you know what we've based it on. Then if those assumptions don't prove true, then we can adjust accordingly, but you'll have a record of what's it based on, what are our major assumptions. So the first one is, and the thing everybody wants to know, so we'll start off real quick, we're not proposing any tax increase. We're also not proposing any decrease. We're proposing the tax rate stay where it is. So that's number one, and that's 66.35 cents. We're assuming only modest increases in the local option sales taxes. We're assuming no increase in any fees associated with the sewer system, and as y'all know, that's a success story. You guys have been fighting that for 3 years, and I think we finally are squared away on that. If we had not have done that, we would have been faced with a rate increase this year. It assumes that adequate fund balances will be maintained in all operating funds. The budget will be adopted and accounted for using the modified accrual basis of accounting. The enterprise and internal service funds will be reported in the annual audit using full accrual accounting similar to private businesses. And just to remind you, in North Carolina, we're required to budget everything on this modified accrual basis. And then at the end of the year, to comply with the Government Accounting Standards Board standards, we have to convert the internal funds and enterprise funds over to full accrual accounting. And the auditor shows you in your audit the steps they take to change that over. So the audit is done in full conformity with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles for governments, but the budget is done fully on modified accrual accounting, and that's required in the state statutes. Okay. This assumes that all full-time employees will be formally evaluated in July and August and be eligible for a merit increase. I'm recommending that the merit pay pool be set at 2%, and this budget includes $600,000 in a contingency line item for that purpose. This is in keeping with the position classification pay plan policies which you adopted in May a year ago, and it's identical to what was done in 16 and 17. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. How is that working, by the way, the merit system?
We think it's working very well.
That's worked very well. All evaluations come through me. I read every single one and sign off on them. On occasion, I have sent evaluations back if I don't think the narrative matches the overall numerical rating, and ask them to reevaluate. If they don't agree with me, then it still comes back and I refer them to the county manager. But overall, from the comments that I read from our employees, they are very receptive of having an annual evaluation. It gives them an opportunity to speak what their goals are, what programs they'd like to be involved in, their aspirations to move up in the county. And it opens a lot of rapport between the employees and the supervisor, which eventually improves morale.
You said a key word, the employees like it. That's a key.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
So the next bullet point is, this assumes that $300,000 will be used to adjust some underpaid positions as determined by salary studies by the HR department and reviewed by management. Our highest priority in fiscal year 18, as we've said several times, will be to review the salaries in the Department of Public Health. This is in keeping with the position classification pay plan policies as well. As y'all know, I think this is the third year of doing this. The first year, we pretty much brought all of our public safety people up. This past year, we did DSS, took care of that, and now it'll be public health. And in between, we've been doing some of these smaller departments, but these are the four largest ones. When you take the sheriff's department, the jail, Office of Emergency Management with the telecommunications folks, EMS, those are your biggest. That was the biggest group the first year. DSS was a pretty big one this past year, and then public health this coming year. So this assumes that employees who achieve certain work-related certifications will be eligible for 2.5% increases during the fiscal year. We've been doing that. We're continuing that. And Geraldine is working on a policy, which we hope to have to you soon, which will formalize in writing which ones of these positions it is and what the increase will be. Assumes that there will be an 11.6% increase in the county's portions of medical insurance premiums for the PPO and the HSA plan. There also will be an 11.6% increase to employee shares of the premium cost for the various dependent care options. As y'all know, we went through that in detail in March because we have to have you make that decision early so we can put it into the budget. And one of the primary reasons that I'm recommending the full 2% is that our employees need a raise to help cover some of these additional costs. So I just wanted to reemphasize that. It assumes that the premium set aside in the workers' compensation fund will remain at the current $480 per employee, so no changes there, and that fund is in great shape. Assumes that the maximum deduction allowed in employees' flexible spending accounts will remain at $2,500 for medical and $5,000 for child care. It assumes the economy will improve somewhat for all of the fiscal year. And it assumes that inflation will remain in the same low range as recent years except for food. I think we all know that's been going up. Revenues were projected from a scale of high, medium, and low within the medium range so that they're neither optimistic or pessimistic. Assumes that some of the proprietary funds will require transfers from the general fund. It assumes that gasoline will average $2 per gallon on the open market and diesel $1.75. The county pays about 50 cents less due to its fuel and sales tax exemptions.
Question.
So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Where did we get them figures from?
I believe we used them, we got them from one of the fuel indexes, if I'm not mistaken.
Personally, I think we're low on them figures, and especially on the diesel. 'Cause, I mean, at the pumps, diesel is more than gas.
Yeah. It may turn out that way, but we typically are able to handle it during the year. And if we need to, we'll transfer some in. Because remember, this is also based on their assumptions of what they're going to use. So in prior years, it still worked out.
And are we set up, well, and county government, state government, I don't understand some of it sometimes, but the general public, you can have a highway fuel and off-road fuel, does that affect us any at all?
We use very little off-road fuel. It's
You
just
use a lot at
Kendall.
the landfill. Kendall uses it.
Yeah, we do that, and we get the off-road on that.
Okay, all right.
But you've got it at the landfill, and you've got some for Kendall, but that's basically it. Okay. All right. Assumes that the state budget will not return any portion of either the lottery proceeds or the ADM funding that the state seized over the last 6 or 7 years to balance their budget. However, it does assume also that they won't cut us any further. So
Keep your fingers.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That
you're
may be
making
a
friends there with that statement.
Now, I will say that there is a bill in the legislature, and John Bell is a big proponent of this, to try to get Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties more lottery money. And that appears to have a pretty good shot of passing. If that's the case, we've not budgeted for that additional money, but that would be additional money for our schools, our debt service on our schools. Okay. The major issues, number one, I'm not going to bore you with all of that. That's just talking about the federal and state economy, some of the unemployment and that sort of thing. Item number two, I did want to go over with you. This is the property tax. As I said before, it's recommended to remain at the current rate. The real property tax base is projected to grow by only 0.39%. That's a very weak rate of growth and is lower than recent years. But that's because we apparently had it a little higher for last year than we should have. On the next page is a chart using North Carolina Association of County Commissioners information. I wanted to go over that with you, if you'll turn to that chart. In getting this information, you'll see that of our neighboring counties, we have the second lowest property tax rate, which is very good. What this does is it has the population, the assessed value, and then when you divide the population into the assessed value, you get the assessed value per capita. The reason we're doing that on a per capita basis is so you can compare, see how you compare to a lot of these others. And you'll see that Craven County has a lower tax rate, but they also have a property value which is about 33% higher than ours. I'll give you that percentage here. It's 30% higher than Wayne County. Among the 9 counties with populations between 100 and 150,000, which is the bottom part of this chart, we have the 6th lowest tax rate. The 3 lowest, Brunswick, Craven, and Henderson, all have sizable, wealthy retiree populations and considerably larger tax bases per capita than Wayne County. I think everybody can see that on those 3. The other 2 that we're higher than, we are not appreciably higher than either one, but Randolph and Rowan County are them. Rowan has a tax rate that's only 0.4% lower than Wayne County's, but it has a tax base per capita that is 33.7% higher than ours. So in fact, they're actually taxing their people much more than we are, because they're bringing in a whole lot more tax money than we are. Randolph County has a tax rate that's only 1.5% lower than Wayne County's, but has a tax base per capita that's 10.8% larger than Wayne County. So those are the reasons why those 5 are lower than we are on the tax rate. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My concern is the recent developments in regards to losing school funding. And we are a 1/10 of a point less than what the cutoff rate is.
Right.
For that low wealth
That's
school
right.
funding. I suppose my question here is, would it be prudent for us to adjust our rate to be at that benchmark rate? That, I mean, I know that, you know, we don't want to discuss this, but we need to.
Yeah.
Would it be prudent for us to tick that up just that tad to make sure that we ensure our school system gets that $2 million?
You could. I think what we were basing this on was, previous discussions we had had where y'all had indicated you wanted to stay where you
Oh,
were.
well, I mean,
But if you want to
it's
bump
bad
it,
that we're being punished for having a lower tax rate.
well, we
but-
are.
But at the same time, we've got to look at it from the standpoint of protecting the funds going into our school system.
That's
Because we
right.
certainly cannot make up a $2 million
No,
deficit.
no, and we're counting on the state budget, that amendment in the state budget to do that, which we still think that will happen. But if you're asking me for additional insurance, yes.
Well, let me ask it a different way. If in fact, for some reason, it is not handled in the budget, if it's not, what options do we have to adjust our rate after the fact?
Only if the Board of Education sues you and wins.
Well, we certainly don't want that. So you can't adjust the rate, but we're not gonna know what's gonna happen on the budget until after we approve our rate.
Well, but what you can do is you can pass an interim budget, which is basically the current year's budget. You just pass that for like 3 months, and you hold off setting the tax rate until after the state does theirs, and then you come back and you put in your full budget with the tax rate. You can't change the tax rate, but you can delay it.
I just think we need to have some options here in the event that for some reason,
Yeah.
well, I mean, that's $2 million, and our school system needs it desperately.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just throwing it out here on the table. I think we need to consider what our options are.
I agree with Mr. Doherty. I mean, if we have to increase our tax rate, and I'm just throwing this out, and it's gonna collect $500,000 more dollars, but it's gonna get school system $2 million, I mean, that's just good business.
Well, actually, it's only like $80,000
Well,
by the ticket. It's
let-
not really that much.
Well, let us go back through and do the calculation, because if you remember, this thing was a moving target.
It is.
Because the trend on the state's part is it's gradually rising, the state average. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to get above.
So it's 1/10 of a point now, but it could be
It'll be higher.
0.25.
It'll be higher next year, according to that trend line.
Mr. Chairman.
But the thing to remember is that whatever you do, if it doesn't get fixed in the state budget, it's a 2-year delay. So it's gonna affect you for 2 years, not one.
So
Y'all
it's
remember
$4
that?
million.
Y'all remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we do an interim budget, like you said, did I hear you correctly that at the end of 3 or 4 months, we cannot change the tax rate? Is that right?
No, what I'm saying is, Ray, once you vote on the tax rate, you can't change it, short of what Borden's saying, where a court orders you to give the schools more money as a result of a lawsuit. You cannot set a tax rate and change it in a given year. That's statutory.
Right, but during this interim time, this 3
You
to 4
don't set the tax rate.
We just don't set it until we find out where we need to be. Is that
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, is that not a no-brainer? I mean,
At least
now-
we've got an option.
Now, another question is that how would that affect any of our other operations in the county? Will it affect anything?
Well, you don't get an appreciable amount of property tax till November and December.
Right.
So to go 2 or 3 months without it would not be an issue.
So day-to-day operations wouldn't be affected.
No.
Be at the same level that's in this year.
Is there a time limit on this?
No, there's not a time limit, but obviously the state has to do a budget. They're generally done by 1st of September at least, and we think they'll be done sometime no later than early July. They might actually be done June 30th. So you could do that. Now, you've got to adopt some budget by June 30th, because
So we adopt all the budget
without a
exception to
budget,
tax rate.
because without a budget, you have no appropriations in place for us to spend any money.
Right.
So you're saying we could go ahead and pass the budget without changing the tax rate?
You adopt an interim budget,
Okay.
when the interim budget is what you've got right now.
Kind of like a continuing resolution.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's
So
in,
the United States government has been doing that for years.
right. But that's not the model we want to follow.
I knew that was quickly coming.
Okay. Well, does that help explain? You could do that, hold off, and let's see if the budget, the state budget fixes it. Now, here's another thing you could do is that if that fixes it and you still want insurance on it, is maybe you bump it up a little bit each year over a 2-year period. Because you're still gonna face this in 2 years.
No, I think the language, if I'm correct, the language in the budget should cover this if the budget passes.
Correct. The proposed language would, but the Senate's budget didn't have it in it.
Agreed.
So we're getting it in the House, they go to reconciliation, and it should be taken care of at that point.
I'm just saying that's a lot of faith to be putting out there on a budget and a one line
Right.
to go in
Well,
that budget.
Well, I would do the interim budget. If they're not done, in other words, I would wait them out before you set that tax
I
rate.
didn't know that we could do an interim budget. It's the first I've ever heard of it, but.
First time I've ever heard of
Well, it's not something you like to do.
Well,
but,
he really didn't want us to hear, start with.
It's not something, it's not good practice to do it, but it's.
Well, this is an unusual circumstance.
Yeah, and that's what it's for, is something unusual, and this is unusual.
All right, going along that line, assuming that we wanted to implement an interim budget and there are budget amendments to our current budget,
Mhm.
if we needed to, we could pass budget amendments
Yeah.
on this year's budget, correct?
Mhm.
So if, as an example, there were some increases, as I understand it would be on the proposal from BSS, we could just pass a budget amendment on
Yeah.
this year's budget.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Plus, I wouldn't worry about doing that on the interim, because the interim would be for a sizable amount, and you're only gonna need it for about a couple of months. So you'll have more than enough money. And then what happens is, then you'll adopt your regular budget, and it will, Gordon will put language in there that says basically this supersedes the interim budget. So,
You just have to walk us through that.
yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
But the key to it is do not set the tax rate until you know what the state's done.
Right.
And we know what that budget bill says.
Now, Mr. Wood, first, let me say that I am pleasantly surprised that the word a minor tax increase could get what sounds like support all along the shelf up here. And as I thought about this process prior to get here, and then listening to the school system talk about what their wish list is, if we adjusted it and didn't need it, we would have it to work on the other things that we know is needed. And I'm not up here trying to tell you how much that increase needs to be, but all I want you to do is think about the fact that what you just said is that we're open to move in a direction that we need to go. It's just how much and when.
Right.
But our intention, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I was getting ready to say same thing.
Our intentions are though, is to have our tax rate set just above the threshold of where we can apply for the grant, which could be, as Commissioner Doughty said, could be less than $100,000, right?
We gotta see where that moving target is.
Right.
Craig and I and Allison will need to do a trend.
Right.
And see where we think that state number will be.
Right.
And then see where we think we'll be.
Yes, but in the other case, we're gonna be trading some type of small tax increase for $2 million.
Right.
To me,
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth the risk, if there's any risk, which I don't see any.
Well,
based on our
if
finances.
the language is changed in reconciliation for the schools, for military schools, then we would not need to raise the
Right, you're
taxes.
good for 2 years.
Yeah.
I think the concern is.
And I would rather keep it at that, if
Yeah.
that language gets changed,
The
otherwise,
concern-
then we got no other choice.
Well,
but
and
to
the
go
concern
direction.
is going forward, then you've got to keep that in that budget, that state budget every year.
Yeah.
Now, that's what Cumberland and Onslow are counting on, you know, because they get it every 2 years. That's how it's written right now, is it covers them. And so all we're trying to do is lower that population level so that we're included in that mix. And then we need to be sure it's in there every year. Now here's the downside to that is, if it ever didn't come out, you're gonna get hit for 2 years. Because the numbers on that formula are used for the 2 previous years. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, but then another downside would be if we didn't adjust this year and we were saved by it, in 2 more years, we might not get saved by it and have a bigger increase at one time.
Exactly, and that's why I'm bringing that up, Joe. So you guys need to make a decision about, you know, how comfortable you are. And some of that, we just, I think, need to talk to John and Lewis and just get their take on it as to how comfortable they are. Of course, as you know, legislatures change.
Joe, you meant, when you said we may be faced with a larger increase, you meant a larger property tax?
Yes, correct.
That, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
we were talking about apples and apples, and that's where my head would be going too. It's incremental. And then think about the increments that we need, and then what those dollars would be used for
Right.
if all turns out to our advantage now, but we would be preparing.
Well, that
Adequately
is
for
the
the
big, I mean, I'm glad Joe brought it up. That is the big issue y'all need to be thinking about. Is how do you best position yourself? There's no question that the safest course of action is to do both. Get it in the bill and get our money, but position ourselves to where if we didn't get it in the future, we're covered.
So the
We meet
interim
the
way,
formula.
the interim budget is the way to go.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Everybody good with that? All right. Well, let's go back to this then. I've gone over how we stack up among our peers. The one way is our surrounding counties. We compare very favorably. The other one is with those 100 to 150. I will tell you, we've left one out, and that's Moore County. But if anybody's familiar with Moore County, that's Pinehurst. There's no need to stick them in here because they're off the chart, and they're not the real world.
Yeah, Carteret County.
And I can say that because I was there for 6 years, and it's definitely a different world.
Carteret County too, I see.
Yes, that's right. So anyway, that's, I wanted to show you that on that chart. Number 3, funding for public education continues to be a large expense, and I direct y'all to the 2 funds there. This budget does appropriate $349,701 in additional current expenses. Just reminding you that $150,000 of that is earmarked for the new technology plan. This is the second of 4 years, because you did the first one last year, and takes the technology plan funding to $300,000. So, again, though, I mentioned to you that it's actually lower because last year you gave them a $600,000 one-time appropriation. So, and of course, that amount is no longer in the budget because that was a one-time amount. A major concern is, will they do anything with the lottery that hurts us? And as I mentioned here, I've gone over how much that has cost us. It's costing us about $2.5 million a year, and that was at old figures. It would have grown some. So the change in the lottery really has affected all counties, but I've quantified it for you there. That's the impact to us. And so if we're successful in getting that Tier 1, Tier 2 lottery legislation through, that's big. That is really big. And some of the things that we're talking about doing For instance, if you can get that and use some more of that money for your debt service on your schools, that could free up some money we could then use for some of these operating expenses for the schools. Okay, number 5, the $500 bonus is not in effect. As y'all recall, we subsumed that into their salary schedules last year. Does everybody remember that? The only people we couldn't do that for is the part-time people. So I did want to make it clear, this does build in the $500 bonus for the part-time people. But they do it on a pro rata basis. They don't get the full $500. Okay. The new position classification plan was adopted in May of 15. This one does, as I said previously, have the contingency line item of $600,000 for the merit raise pool equal to 2% of salaries and fringes. It also has a $300,000 contingency to be used for adjustments, and that's primarily for the Department of Public Health. And again, just to reiterate, that should be our last really big department to get those salaries adjusted. Number 7, we had a worse than expected claims year in fiscal year 16, as well as medical inflation. And because of that, we faced an 18.6% increase in premiums. We got that reduced down to 11.6, but we had to reduce the components of the plan. All of that is in the hospitalization fund. I explained that in detail as to what we did and what exactly the changes were in the plan. Also, just call to your attention there's a chart back there that shows what the premiums are. But Geraldine also, after open enrollment, takes that chart and she gives you the numbers for each type of plan that our employees are on. So you can see exactly how our employees are choosing to use or not use the plan. This budget contains some additional positions. We all knew we would have 6 paramedics for the new EMS station that you're going to open. Now, that is not for a full year because we won't have it open for a full year. 1 office assistant, 4 in health, 1 program support specialist in health, 1 computer systems administrator for IT, 1 kennel attendant for animal services, 1 groundskeeper for facilities, 3 housekeepers for facilities. A lot of that has to do with the new jail and also MRAC coming on. And again, those are not for full year. 1 assistant assessor / appraiser coordinator for the tax department. This is something they do every time they get into reevaluation on that. And then 1 administrative assistant for Wayne Nett because of the major growth we had from taking over Johnson Ambulance Service. There's a lot more paperwork involved there. And we'll go into more detail on that when we meet on the work session in a week. As noted above, pension funds are having a difficult time earning any net return on fixed income investments like bonds. The North Carolina Local Government Employees Retirement System has announced planned increases in employer pension contributions to offset this Federal Reserve Board created problem. For fiscal year 17, the rate will rise to 7.5 and 8.25. And for each year thereafter, it goes up by 0.25% annually. What is happening there is North Carolina is being proactive. We have one of the best funded retirement systems in the country. So when you read about Illinois, New York, California, and all the problems they're having, we are not in that situation. They have, for years, those states, because of tight budgets, refused to pay in the amount they should have paid into their pensions. And that's what has created the problem. North Carolina has not done that. And what they do is they raise the amounts here. Now, for the state, it's optional as to what they put into the state employees' retirement system. For you, there's nothing optional about this. The state treasurer's office has an actuarial study done every year. They come out, their board votes on it, and that's a mandatory requirement on us. So I just want to stress this is not optional for us. Number 10, The Maxwell Regional Agricultural Convention Center is approximately 50% complete, and when I wrote this the other day, it said we were 52, so that was a guess. And we were pretty, I was looking at it based on how much we had paid for. Okay. The director has been hired, as you know, and we will be developing our rate schedules and other policies, then begin marketing the center for bookings, and all of that is starting now. James is on board, as y'all know, so he'll be working on all the policies. As far as some of the marketing money, Alice and I will have a meeting tomorrow. Bill is on the board for our Wayne County Tourism Development Authority, and there's, you remember, we get another 1% there, and that's for tourism and marketing, and so we'll be coming up with that budget over there tomorrow. We will be conducting a brick paver campaign in the summer, and Noel has that ready to go. I've just got to review it.
Okay.
I put it on hold, obviously, to finish the budget, but she's got the RFQ ready to go. So sometime I would say, Bill, hopefully by the Friday, maybe early part of next week, that's high on my list to get that one out the door.
Okay.
And we'll get that going. The new Cary Winders Detention Center opened in February and has been fully operational for several months. All inmates that have been housed in other counties were brought back to Wayne County in March, and none have been transferred out since then. We anticipate having enough space to rent out to other counties, and the sheriff has that in progress. So our estimate is that we will be able to keep at least 50 around the clock. 365 days, and so that's what it's based on. I'm hopeful we can do better than that. And if you look at the numbers, y'all get the daily report, we have better than that available. But remember, right now they want to do some repairs on the current jail, and we're doing those as we speak. Also, the chiller unit project over there is well underway. One is already in. They're getting ready to put the second one in. It took a little longer than expected because we had to do some internal wiring there. It wasn't set up for the larger chillers that we brought in. But that major project is almost done, and then Kendall's doing the other work over there too. Number 12, excuse me, the proposed new 911 center is under design, should be ready to bid out in the late summer. Obviously, it's a badly needed facility, as the current facility has no room for expansion, and yet our call volume for telecommunications division continues to grow. So we're taking steps to deal with that. It's on target, and I think we're at the point now we're reviewing the site work with the architect, and then we should be ready to bid before much longer on that. This is a change. The facilities maintenance expanded its servicing to all of the county fleet. It operates as an internal service fund, so we charge our departments. This was a major transition and is saving the county on its vehicle maintenance. But to better finance this operation, we're recommending an increase in the labor rate from $48 to $60 per hour. Kendall feels like we need to go up to that, and in looking at it, we feel like we need to do that. Now that is basically that's what we're charging our internal departments. That's still cheaper than the going rate in the commercial market outside if you've had your car worked on. The Will Sullivan Building housing the state, adult, and juvenile probation offices has some major issues and should be renovated. The Facilities Committee is in the process of determining the best course of action for this building, as well as the rented offices used for adult probation. Funding will have to be determined after this study is complete. But I think we all know we have a pretty good plan for moving forward with that. We just haven't finalized it yet. The Department of Social Services and the Public Health Department share the county office building on Ash Street. In the current fiscal year, East Point's lease on 3 floors of the Borden building expired, and we were able to move some DSS employees into those 48 additional offices. The Facilities Committee is studying how to move the rest of the DSS employees out of the county office building. One possible solution is to renovate the current USDA offices once they move into the Maxwell Regional Agricultural Convention Center next March. That's the building on the far end. It's on the left-hand side. It's the best building down there. and it's in good shape. Kendall and I have walked through it. It's kind of an open floor plan, so we could do, you know, what do you call those? Dividers.
Cubicles.
Cubicles, thank you. So we could do that. If additional space is needed, the current North Carolina Cooperative Extension Office can be raised and an addition to the USDA office constructed. So there's room in that area basically to put the rest of DSS, whatever we determine we need in there. The advantage of this is that they would be within a block and a half of the rest of DSS, except for the ones that are in this courthouse. And we don't want to move them because Borden handles those child support cases, and it makes sense for them to be here because they're in court, what, weekly? Every other week. So that's kind of what the Facilities Committee has been looking at there. And again, the advantage is you would use the existing building, the parking lot, and utilities with limited actual construction costs. And as I said, it placed this DSS building within one block of the Borden building where ultimately the rest of DSS will be located. The Facilities Committee is also in the process of evaluating whether the county office building location of the Public Health Department should be renovated or a new building constructed. And as y'all know, you've just authorized an architectural study to make that determination because the committee felt they were at a standstill until we knew what was the condition of the building and which way did it make sense to go on that. We have already been negotiating that contract. He has responded in the past week with his formal proposal on that, and we'll be getting with him now that the budget preparation's behind us. Number 16, the county's made significant improvements in a major infiltration and inflow problem with the Genoa sewer system. With the installation of 7 sewer meters at connection points to other sewer systems, we have identified and can now bill those systems for excess flows based on sewer flows, not water meter readings. That has stabilized this fund, and I've got, just see the sewer fund for more details on that. But I just want to say that's been a real success story, and you guys are to be commended because it's taken about, what, 2.5 years, I think we've been working on this, but between fixing our infiltration and inflow, and then finally determining that a lot of it was these other systems and putting these meters in, that really is, that's turned the tide on it. Okay. Number 17, we will use more fund balance appropriated than we normally do in this fiscal year. The primary reasons are that the EMS fund in 17 had a fund balance of about $1 million that is no longer available. So we knew that was coming. Second, our debt service is increasing by over $2 million for the $42 million bond issue. You will recall that we have 2 years, we will have 2 years of this added debt. Then some existing debt is paid off in fiscal year 2020, and our debt service will drop by about $1.2 million, then drop about half that again in fiscal year 2021. So over the course of 2 years, it'll drop right at $2 million. So this is a temporary situation. Third, we have budgeted to build 5 EMS stations to improve coverage to an 8-minute response to 98% of the calls in the county. This will cost approximately $1.5 million. One of those stations will be in an area where there is no station now, and that'll be in the northeast corner of the county. And that will require the hiring of 6 paramedics to man it 24/7, and that'll require about $170,000. And again, that's not the full year. Number 18, and we just discussed this, we will probably not know the impact of the state's budget on ours by June. The best we can do under the circumstances is monitor the state's budget process through the NCACC and then voice our concerns to the General Assembly. You do need to take this uncertainty into account as you review and finalize the adopted budget, and obviously we have more concern than normal given the $2 million issue this year. Number 19, in a separate document, we've prepared an updated capital improvements plan, which is your capital outlay proposal for the next 5 years. We'll go through that briefly after we finish the budget. Just a reminder, the first year contains those capital items that have been included as capital in this budget. So I encourage you to review that planning document very closely. And then, as I say in the conclusion, this isn't everything, but these are the major issues, I think, facing us as a county. And so I wanted to give you that overview. And I guess the question I have, does anybody think we've left anything out that needs to be discussed in the budget? Or do you?
I think so.
Okay. Now, we've made it clear that even when we get the study back on the health department, that doesn't mean we're going to jump out there and do the health department. I've made that very clear to the health director. And I think we've been very clear on that on the front end. But this study will help us in doing pretty much the final leg we need to finish that facilities master plan that we've been working on. Okay. So, again, over a 3 or 4 year period that y'all have been here, you've done a lot on your facilities. You've cleaned up a lot of things. You've put some new facilities in place. We've renovated quite a bit. We've put roofs on. We've put HVAC on. We've now built into the budget. We have some money every year now for repaving the parking lots. And so I think we're in a good place going forward with that. And then as you gradually address these issues, I think we'll be in real good shape. And the only other issue then, of course, facing you is, do the schools come back at some point and need anything additional as far as other replacement schools? So that's pretty much the major issues. I've gone over the assumptions. I've gone over the major issues. And again, I highly recommend that you read each fund's background and notes before you get into the individual budget directly behind it. The notes will tell you where most of whatever the major changes are. It's not everything, but it's where the significant changes have been made. So with that, we'll go ahead and look at the individual funds. And if you guys will go back to the general fund, I'm not going to get into the details of each department. That's what we'll do on next Tuesday. But I do want to give you a good overview of it.
George.
If you'll go to the revenues and expenditures chart, which is the second page behind the tab.
Which tab are we on now?
General fund.
Let me ask you a question before you go back.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone know anything or have heard whether or not they're going to pass that new law on the juvenile, the 16 and 17-year-olds, and what kind of impact you think that would be on our budget?
It'll have an impact. I'm not sure it's going to cut down on the number that more will go to juvenile instead of over here, right? So it could be a decrease, which would free up. No, they don't.
Everybody seems to think it's going to pass. There's talk that the legislature will make sure that the state absorbs any additional money that the county, what's happening to pass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That'll last about a year.
If they do it.
Yeah. Okay. So, John, did that address your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right, on the major point I want to make on the revenues is, we have a lot of individual, this is an aggregation, and then later on, behind this, you have every single revenue source in the general fund, but this aggregates it. And the thing I wanted to point out to you is, if you'll look in the far right column as I've talked about this, the property tax is 34% of your general fund revenues. Now, that's 34% of this general fund plus those 11 subsidiary funds, okay? Because they're included in all of this. Sales tax is 13%. Then the next one down, health, is 3%, and that's the state money you get from them, okay? Social services, right below that, you get 8% from the state. Transfers from other funds is 29%. Okay, and that's on at the top of the next page. And then fund balance appropriated this year is 7% total. Those 6 revenue sources are 94% of your budget.
How much you say the transfers from other funds was touchdown about 20,
29.
29?
Yeah.
I just couldn't see it.
Okay. Now, following that, and following the revenues there, which you've gotten, you have write-ups on the major revenues, major changes there. This is not every revenue source, but it's the major stuff, okay? Then you have a detailed budget. That's every line item, revenue source. Following that, it's about 10 pages or so. You get to something titled expenditures. And on that, I give you the major changes in each department. I don't give you every line item, but major changes there. And then following that, once you get through with that, then you start with the tabs. And it starts with Board of Commissioners, and each one of those departments is tabbed. That's what those white tabs are. So anything you want to find, you should be able to find very quickly on that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is that okay to answer the question?
Sure.
One of my, if you would show me where our fund balance is and what percentage, I know we're required to have 8% of the state statute.
Right.
Is that?
We were at, I believe it was it 28 unassigned, I believe. There is a summary. Okay. Ray, there is, the tab right behind the managers, the budget message from the manager is a tab called Summary Budgets, All Funds. That has the fund balances.
Okay, county manager's message, and right behind that. Okay.
It should be a summary of all funds.
Okay, summary of all funds. Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to skip through the general fund as far as any details on that, because y'all need time to read through that. And then we'll come back in a week and go through those. The next fund is the next blue tab, which is Court Facilities Fund. And as y'all recall, this is used, as I say here, these funds come from monies from the court system, but they have to be used on the court system. And we're responsible for providing adequate facilities to house the court system. This includes the courtrooms, judges' offices, district attorney's offices, clerk and superior court, and similar administrative offices, and this fund covers those costs. We do not cover their salaries and benefits and all of that. The state of North Carolina is responsible for doing those expenses. So everybody got the court fund? So that's what that write-up there is telling you. Included in this court facilities fund is the $44,050 we paid to rent the Purser building for juvenile probation. Okay. So when we do finally take care of that situation as far as the renovation of another building and move those people out, that frees up that $44,000 we're paying in that rent. Next one is the sales tax fund. And again, this is a subsidiary fund of the general fund. The first paragraph explains what I was telling you previously, that it'll be subsumed into the general fund later. The two sales taxes are authorized in two articles of Chapter 105. Article 40 is a 0.5% tax. It's pooled at the state level, then apportioned among the counties on a per capita basis. 30% of that one has to go to the schools for their capital outlay. Okay. Article 42 is a 0.5% that's apportioned differently. The key on that one is that 60% of the county's portion must be used for school capital outlay or debt service. And so we're using these for debt service on ours.
Could I ask you, why are you projecting a reduction in our sales tax?
Because the increase, we're actually projecting a little bit of growth over what actually came in. But what is coming in this year is a little less than what we projected.
It's not that the sales tax has come in less than last year. It's just we had budgeted for a higher growth for 16-17, and we've not met that growth factor. It's come in higher than what we got in 15-16, the actual numbers.
But
it's just it didn't meet the growth projections that we had.
But as I recall, there was the new, Article 43 or
Right.
44
Yes,
or
that's
something?
right.
44.
It came in about where we projected.
That did come in.
Yeah, it's the other three that are off.
We had growth projections in addition to the Article 44, and those other three articles is really what's not met the growth projections.
So you had it a little bit too high for this year,
Yeah.
so you're
Right.
reducing it down.
Yeah, we're still higher than where we were for the previous year.
Right.
So when we say we're budgeting less, it's not that we're budgeting less than what we've received last year. It's we're budgeting less than what we budgeted last year is the right way to say it.
I'm just not quite understand why you are having a less revenue growth, like the ad valorem taxes. So our two major sources of revenue, you are actually projecting less dollars.
And Alan with tax probably could explain this a little better than I can, specifically in the areas of personal property and the utility company, public service companies, is I think the real estate was up a little bit, but the other two offset it enough that it was down slightly. Now, the vehicle taxes are still doing well, and that's really what's kind of helping us out. But those two areas, basically, where the property is depreciating, and I guess there's not enough of new purchases to offset what's being depreciated.
And that is the difference. She's explained it very well. Real property does not depreciate, but the personal property does. So like equipment, manufacturing equipment, things like that, they're on a depreciation schedule. So if they haven't reinvested as much, their tax bill actually goes down. And the same thing, as you know, the various utilities, it's also railroads, power companies, all of that. That's done by the state because a lot of that has to be split up, however they do that, I guess based on the mileage of a track or whatever it is. But anyway, that was down. And so that means their tax base is depreciated.
Oh, you did say that sales taxes had actually gone up about 2%.
Yeah, we're projecting about a 2% growth from actual.
Yeah.
There were a couple of things that made it particularly difficult to project for 16-17, and we received budget projections from the NCACC, and they actually had us at a higher growth projection than what we even took. We took a conservative number, but because they had the redistribution, they had base expansion going on during that time, it's really hard to know what the effect of those things are going to be.
So what we've tried to do for this year is be conservative, make sure we meet the numbers, and then you're straightened out, and then going forward next year, you should be back to a more normal growth on your sales tax. Property tax, I would hope on next year, you'll have a hopefully it will have a growth rate. But again, it depends on if these utilities and personal property go down again. But we are experiencing growth. You know, you can tell by the amount of new construction you see out there.
Well, and the average person sees a lot of construction, so if we're projecting less revenue, there better be an explanation of why you're projecting
That's
less.
right.
Okay.
And it's those utilities and it's the personal property going down.
It's let me ask a question.
And I will say this, I went over this 3 times with Alan, because I had the same question. And plus, it's a large part of our budget, so I spend a lot of time on the property tax. But I will say, to Alan's credit, I've worked with him, this is my 4th budget, he's usually on the money.
I had a question, could it affect our revenue if, and what I'm seeing out in the real estate market here in Wayne County, I see properties still selling for less than the evaluation, the tax evaluation. So if a house is sold and we're basing ours projections based on a reevaluation, we're gonna get less revenue if they sell for less.
Well, let me go over that with you, because you've got revaluation coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, no matter what it sells for now, it's still it remains on the books that it's valued at 2,000, what was your last one, 11?
2,000,
Yeah, 11.
that's right.
Yeah, so everything is key to the value at 2011.
Right.
Now, during the coming fiscal year, you're going to be working on revaluation. And when you do next year's budget, 6 months into that budget, January 1 of 19 is when your revaluation figures come in. That will affect the following budget. So you're 2 budgets away from being impacted by a revaluation. Okay. Now, what'll happen there is, basically, the revaluation is based on sales comparables during primarily 2018. They'll use some 17, but primarily most recent sales.
Yeah.
So whatever it's selling for there. I will tell you, there's a study they do, a sales ratio test every year, and Alan showed me the results of that. We're right at 100%. Now, what that means is that your revaluation ought to be relatively painless, because it means on average, you're on the money. What you normally see in a revaluation is that you're somewhere around 92 or 93%, which means you're 6 to 7% low, maybe 8% low, which then means on average, and I want to stress that, because you're going to get some people who go higher than this, some people who go lower than this, but on average, people's property values would go up 7%. Then by state law, you have to take it back down. You have to take your tax rate back down to what's called a revenue neutral tax rate. What that means is you can't get a 6 or 7% windfall. You have to take the tax rate down to what that is. Then if you want to take it back up, that's up to you, but then everybody knows it's a tax increase. Okay? So that's, from 30,000 feet, that's how the revaluation is going to work. But you're in a very good position, because right now, you're at 100%. Now, I faced an unusual circumstance in Lincoln in 2000. We revalued in 2011, and our values were low, which almost never happens. But we didn't have growth. We had a decline of 5.8%. Now, what that means is, I told you if it normally grows, you have to lower your tax rate. Well, if you want the same amount of money on a smaller tax base, you have to raise it 5.8%, which obviously nobody wants to do. That's the worst case scenario. And that has happened to some counties in North Carolina. But The good news here is you're on an 8-year revaluation cycle. And so what that did for you is hopefully you have bridged the down, the severe downturn and have come back up. And you're kind of back to normal. But my guess is you had some real issues in 11 on your revaluation. I haven't talked to Alan about that, but most people did. But again, you bridged the real depth in 7 and 8, came back up some before you had 2011.
Well, the problem on the last evaluation, I remember distinctly, was that the year previous is what we had to go by for comparables. And by the time the taxes were implemented, the market had failed. So that's why we got so much pushback from a lot of citizens.
Right.
We had people come up here, if you remember, and say, how about the county needs to buy my property for the evaluation, tax evaluation. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So
You'll get that.
it's the year before the tax year that they are, by statute, by comparables, and once that's soaked into me, it was a much higher market the year before our tax evaluation took effect.
Right.
So,
Well, you're exactly right. So what you need to be looking at is where's the market come January 1 of 18 and starting through that year.
yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay. On the expenditures, I wanted to point out one thing to you. Just like with the revenues, where a small number of them are where the meat of it is, if you look at your major expenditures, if you'll go to that summary sheet for expenditures, I should have said this before I got into these individual funds.
Which way is that?
If you go back to the general fund,
Okay.
way back to the beginning, I should have covered this at that point. If you'll thumb through the general fund till you get to that summary sheet for expenditures. Probably about 12 or 13 pages in, right after the revenues.
Expenditures, general fund.
Yeah, I'm looking for the summary. Allison, where is the summary on
It's
this?
about 3 pages back from the very back. I've got expenditures, the general fund summary, revenues and expenditures. Is that it?
Yeah, mine doesn't have it.
The first blue tab?
No, it's still.
Oh, I got revenue.
What I'm looking at.
Right, what I'm looking for now is the chart.
Oh, there's a chart.
It's just a few pages back from the very end.
Yeah, I don't have a chart, but I've got a.
We don't have, we have the write-up, but we don't have expenditures summary.
This one here.
That's got revenues and expenditures. Oh, I'm sorry. If you go back to the revenues summary, she's got the expenditures chart with it.
Right.
So it's like 2 or 3 pages in behind the general fund tab.
Okay, gotcha.
Everybody there?
Nope.
Which tab you find? The blue tab, first blue tab, general. General fund.
First blue tab, it's the 3rd page.
Third page.
All right, everybody see that? Everybody got it?
Thank you, ma'am.
Here's what I wanted to go over with you. There are a lot of really small areas in there, but if you look at these, I'm going to give you 12 categories. This is where 87% of your budget is, these 12 categories, okay?
So you're looking at expenditures, right?
I'm looking at expenditures.
Okay.
First one that you want to look at is facilities. It's about the 9th or 10th line down there. Everybody see it?
Ooh.
That's 3%. Okay? Sheriff's Department is 6%. The detention center is 4%, is 6.7 million. Health Department is $8.2 million. It's down towards the bottom of the page. It's 5%. Everybody see that? Social services expenses are 17 million. They're 11% of your budget. Then, of course, the big one is public schools. Current expense is 13 million. It's $20 million, 13%. Then you have capital outlay for the schools of 2 million, right below that. Public schools debt is 4.5 million. Everybody see that? County debt is 5.7 million, or 4%. Transfer to other funds is 45 million. Now, that's where these transfers go to those auxiliary funds. And then transfers to enterprise funds is another 7 million. When you add those up, that's $136 million. And those 12 categories make up 87% of your budget. Wow. Okay. So now if we can go back, we talked about the court facilities fund, we've talked about the sales tax fund. So if we can go back to the sales tax fund, we'll start going back through these funds then.
Excuse me, let me go back to your expenses here.
All right.
You got debt service for Board of Education for the current year of 4.6 million, and then you are showing for the next year being 4.5 million.
Yeah.
Didn't you just?
I think there's a misnomer there. I think we've put it all into
debt service to the county.
To the county.
And part of that is for the new school,
Right.
so.
We need to break that out.
Okay, so that's different.
That is different. You're
Thank
right. No, you're right. And we'll show that to you in the debt service schedule, Joe.
Well, yeah, what you're showing here, I mean, it basically looks like we went from debt service on the county from 2.4 million up to 5.7.
Right.
And that's, we didn't do that.
No.
About half of the bond was for the school and the schools, and the other half was county.
That's right.
Okay.
So it should be a split there.
Okay.
All right.
So we're not really spending 23% on the schools.
Yeah,
It's a little less than that.
Please change that quickly.
Yeah.
That's what it look like.
Y'all see what he's talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we do need to get that changed. Okay, senior citizen fund. Again, I give you a write-up there. I don't think we need to say much more than that's what runs the senior center.
Oh, we're going back to tabs?
Yeah, I'm going to tabs now. I'm on the fourth blue tab, Fund 116, says Senior Citizens Fund. Everybody see that?
There it is, right there.
All right, I give you a write-up there that talks about where most of the funding comes from, how it's set up, and that sort of thing. We're using some more of their fund balance, but we're decreasing the transfer from the general fund by a larger amount, so the net effect on us is better. The next one is the 4-H fund. And this is used to account for revenues and expenditures for all our 4-H programs. There's a number of those. The thing that I emphasize here is this fund does not include the portions of salaries and benefits that the county shares with North Carolina State University for Cooperative Extension Office personnel. That funding is within the general fund under North Carolina Cooperative Extension. So again, this is just the 4-H programming here in this special fund. Everybody good on that? Okay, this next one is the QSCAB fund. And basically what this is it's used to account for the revenues and expenditures to pay for this zero coupon bond for school construction. The money earmarked for principal payments is placed in this sinking fund for future payment in one lump sum in October of 2026. Annually since the bond issuance in 2012, principal of $1,071,428 and interest of $649,500 has been budgeted. The interest is paid semi-annually, but the principal is set aside as noted above. The county is reimbursed about 92.5% of the interest expenses by the federal government. So the net effect is that the bonds are almost interest-free to the county. Is everybody following that? So a zero coupon bond means that you're not making any payments of principal until the end of the bond issue. You set it aside in a sinking fund, and then you make one payment at the end of time. So this started in 2012 and goes to 26, so that was like a 14 or 15-year bond is what's happening. Now, the federal government came out with these QSCAB bonds, and basically what they said is they won't be tax exempt, but we'll give you the money, pay the interest. And so this is a lesson to be learned here. Never totally trust the federal government to stay the course, because they lopped off about 8.5 or 7.5%, and in the future you don't know if they'll lop it off more. So I'm always for using a fixed rate, lock it down, and then you know you issued a tax-free municipal bond, and you don't have to worry about if the federal government's going to change the rules after the fact. So I just wanted to point that out to y'all. But overall, it's been a very good, it's still a very good deal for the county because it is almost interest-free. Okay, the next one, Wayne Community College Fund. I explain in there, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but that explains very clearly what they're responsible for paying, they being the state, what the state's responsible for, and by and large, they're responsible for instruction. You're responsible for the facilities, maintaining the facilities, insuring them, and all of that. And so I lay all of that out for you. I also give you the statute. If you'd like to read the law on it, it's all right there. I did reiterate for you that they got $5.8 million of the $2 billion North Carolina bond issue that was approved in March of 16. 1.6 will be used for the Advanced Manufacturing Center and the rest for renovations of existing facilities. The budget overall is $557,000 less than the current budget. The primary difference is a significant decrease in capital outlay, because you remember in fiscal year 2017, they brought forward a bunch of capital outlay they hadn't spent before. Y'all remember that? So that's why it's gone down. The actual transfer from the general fund is increased by $146,401. They're requesting 2 new positions, a police officer for the Advanced Manufacturing Center campus and a grounds maintenance worker rather than part-time employees. In addition, and this is the bigger part, they are requesting funding to bring all operational full-time employees up to the designated state minimum as set out by the North Carolina Community College system. So what Dr. Walker is trying to do is basically what you've been doing over the last 3 years with your pay plan, is getting that squared away, and he's trying to do the same thing here. The first step is to get them all at least to the state minimum. So, Wayne, you're a trustee out there. Did you want to add anything about that?
No, not really.
Okay.
Other than he is making some drastic changes.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
On the police officer position, they want to hire to be at Advanced Manufacturing Center, are they going to put it out there before they ever move anybody, or?
Well, they've got some people out there now, but that's an issue we need to talk about, is when do they need it? They feel like they need it now.
Got questions on that.
Yeah, because they do have employees out there now. Okay.
Just
Well,
because they have
it's-
employees out there, they need to have a police officer?
That's what they're requesting.
Well, I think if we check, I think there's some general statutes. If you have off campuses, you got to provide the same services that off campus do you get from the main campus.
And there may be.
I
There may be on
I
there.
think that's where they're coming from.
Okay.
I did put it in there.
But should we check to see if that means students or employees?
I think,
The state statute.
we'll double check that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the capital outlay, Wayne Jetport camera systems, we want to replace those at 9344. Digital sign, they want a new digital sign out of the college, but they want to take the one they have and put it out at the college, out at the Advanced Manufacturing Center. So that's something y'all need to look at there.
And when they gonna start operating on it?
Who knows?
We don't know.
We don't know yet because they are finishing the design, y'all remember that. And once they do that,
Probably after
then
we're gone.
we'll move forward with that. But it's their project. It's in the hands of state construction now.
So, let me back up just a second. The Jetport, the camera system.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's just for their.
That's for their part.
Just for their part.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and you see the rest of the capital outlay there. I'm not gonna read through every one of them.
Curiosity questions, please. Just curiosity, what's a wood chipper?
What they're looking at there, Joe, is they're getting ready to go through a lot of woods removal out there, and they feel like it's cheaper to get a chipper than to pay somebody to do that.
Does the county not already have a chipper?
I don't think we have one.
We don't have one anywhere.
I know the city
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little strange.
But that's what's driving that.
That's the first I've heard of.
Can't imagine them doing cleanup like that.
I mean,
That's,
And again, remember on any of these, you can ask them to come in and we can go over the budget.
I can ask that question tonight. We've got
All
a board
right.
meeting tonight.
All right.
well, if you'd asked them whether or not they'd consider possibly leasing one for that little bit of, whatever deforestation that they're doing, rather than buying one.
That whole list needs to be clarified.
what's a venture cap?
From the, well, I think the digital sign needs to be questioned too.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that now.
36,000 for a wood chip.
Well, again, Wayne, if you'll, in the interest of time, if you'll go over that with them.
And it seems like we had the 15-passenger van last year that was on this list.
It was a request. I don't think it made it.
Well, here it is on the list, though.
I know. I cut it last year.
Oh, you cut it last year,
Yeah.
so it was on the request.
Right.
and just.
It was requested, yeah.
Well, why didn't you cut it this
Okay.
year before it came up here?
It's getting to the point they need to replace it. They really do.
15-passenger van.
Okay, well, that's what we need to know.
All right, the next one is the revaluation fund. I don't think we need, I think we've already discussed that. Y'all know when it's coming and all that, okay?
Let me go back to that. You've got that total there of the $238,000 in your budget, though.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So as we start cutting, we.
Yeah, if you see listed capital outlay in here, that's what I'm
It's in the budget.
recommending.
Okay.
It's not necessarily what they've asked for. There's some things didn't make it. The main thing on the revaluation fund is, we told you we pay that money in for 8 years. Now we'll start using it. So you'll see an appropriation of fund balance on this. That's because he's starting to use it. He'll start using it this year, doing revaluation work. Next one is DSS Public Assistance. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this. I think when you read over it, you've got the notes on the major changes. We've also given you 2 pages back. If you'll look, there are so many components to DSS, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least 4 of y'all have served on the DSS board, so you know what I'm talking about. What we have given you there is a synopsis so that you can see by division where the money's going and increases and things like that. And on the explanations, I've given you what's driving that in each division. Okay.
But my understanding is that the new interim director is amending that.
Yes, he wants to come in, and this is when I was gonna talk about that. What he's asking for basically is 11 additional positions. Now, before you gasp, 7 of those are for child care investigation personnel. And what he's saying is it takes about 6 months to get those people trained and in the field, and we have enough turnover that they want. Yeah, let's get that. She's gonna give you this information out.
I have my copy from the board
Well,
meeting yesterday. If we need it.
She's got it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what.
Just we'll let her know. So what they're doing is they're reclassifying one position to a social worker, program manager, adult services. They want to add 2 new positions for social worker, program manager, child protective services. Then add 2 new positions, which are program integrity. That's basically the fraud unit. They want to add 2 fraud unit people. Now let me get back to these 7 new positions. Basically, what Earl is saying is that on average, we keep about 7 vacancies there. And so what they want to do is authorize them to carry 7 more people. And the idea would be then he can keep it up to the level he really needs. But one of the things he stressed to me on the phone was their caseload is 25 cases per employee, and it should be down around 10. So that's why they're trying to do this. That's also, he thinks, is contributing a lot to why we're having the turnover rate that we're having there. So it's debatable about whether we would actually spend the additional money on those 7 or not because of the turnover rate. But what he wants is authorization to carry that many more so that he has them kind of getting trained and ready to go as this attrition hits. So that was my understanding of it. I have him scheduled to come in on the 30th and give you a detailed briefing all on this because except for 2 of you, this is all new to everybody else.
Yes.
And they just worked on it yesterday at their board meeting, so none of this is in the budget because we didn't know, this was coming.
Well, I've got one question on it because I couldn't quite understand it. Maybe Craig and you can explain it to me. They basically are at this staffing level and have 7 open positions. And they evidently can't fill those 7 positions. And as a result, all of the existing personnel has increased caseload. His argument is if you increase the number of positions by an additional 7, that gives you 14 open positions now, that somehow you're going to fill the 7 that currently are open. And you would still have the other 7 that you wouldn't fill. I don't understand how you're going to fill additional positions by just simply saying, okay, fine, we're going to double the number.
I think what he's saying is rather than wait until somebody leaves because of the lead time and training them and everything, is that we authorize him to hire some people. And what he's saying is because of the attrition, by the time they're hired, you'll probably need them because you've lost someone else.
But
so
would would you not increase your personnel by 7?
I think what he also looked at was historical data, and regardless if we had 150 or 180 people within DSS, historically there was a 7-person average amount of vacancies. So I think what he was looking at was saying, well, if we've averaged 7 vacancies, maybe if we also increase it by 7 positions, we can kind of balance that out a little bit to where we truly can be more accurate.
So I'm not convinced you're gonna spend the money.
Well, and he
let's be-
keeps saying that we're not going to spend the
Well,
money.
I think
but-
what he's really asking for is authorization for more positions, but you won't actually spend the money because of the training gap. And that's why I'm a poor substitute for him today. That's why I want to have him in here
Okay.
next week and let him go into detail on why he wants all.
I was there, but I sat there.
I believe it's-
This is one time I kind of kept my mouth shut.
I believe it's the
couldn't
same
quite
reason.
understand.
I'd like to say, as chairman of the DSS board, I think you're right, George. Here's where we're coming from. If we have add these other positions, yes, it does take a while to find people, but at the same time, he's getting ready to start some job fairs that's coming up that's gonna fill these positions. What the idea is to keep the caseload, no matter how many it takes. It may take all 7 at some point, or it may only take 2. But the key is that the funding, the money is there in case he needs it to keep this caseload down.
Right.
And that's the whole idea. He implemented this, by the way, over in Johnson County. He also did it over in Pitt County.
Right.
And it works great. Now, having said that, before we make any assumptions, let's let him come next commissioner meeting and make his case and go from there.
Well, when I heard about it yesterday afternoon, that's exactly what we did. I called him because I wanted to make sure that I understood it.
Yeah.
And Craig had given me a good synopsis.
Right.
Borden was there. He gave me a good, they filled in the blanks. I was a little bit like you.
Yeah.
And,
I know.
I'm kind of a money guy, and I want to make sure I'm following the money. So I called him up to make sure we went over it.
Mm-hmm.
And the explanation Ray's given you and what I've given you is what he's telling us. And so what I told him I'd like to do is, today is not for our internal departments, it's to go over, just an overview, and then we'll get into it next week. And I said, so I invited him to come at next week.
All right, we'll let him come and
Go
explain
into
it. Maybe
detail.
he can explain it, but I've got some real
I
questions.
got a question.
And that's good.
I think I understand what you're saying. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it. And I hope the other county departments will take the same philosophy of trying to create more positions to create a 100%
Right.
employee rate. Because, you look at EMS, sheriff,
Right.
jail, I mean, it's
Right.
countywide. So that philosophy really, in my mind, sinks. But more importantly, I think we need to look at and address the root problem there for so much turnover.
Well, you're right, and part of this is, I think you're in a vicious cycle right now. In other words, when you get down that low, the workload per employee has gone up, which creates a tougher environment, which causes people to further say, I don't want to keep doing this. So I think what he's trying to do is get on top of it, get these 7 jobs in there. That, by definition, cuts a lot of this down. It cuts that 25 caseload down.
So does that 7 positions finally go away?
Yeah, I think, in my mind, I don't think you're gonna fill them.
Because, I mean,
I'm talking about, you're gonna fill the 7 you got, Joe. I don't think you're gonna fill the 7 he's asked.
But
I
they're
think-
authorized.
Well, I think that's what he's asking for, is the authorization, but not to
But you-
fill it.
you still
Which is
gotta-
why I want to be clear about it, because I want to be clear about whether there's even any money attached to it, or we just say, yeah, you can proceed with the advertisement and all that stuff.
And you
kinda
still
keep it cool.
still have a root problem, because this year went through a position reclassification and brought salaries up, but you're still having big turnovers. There's a major problem somewhere. It's got to be
The
addressed.
major problem is like it's already been suggested, is the high caseload.
Yeah.
When these people are working all during the night because they don't have enough staff, that's been the position, the
Right.
problem in this particular area all the time. And also the other question that I'll have Earl to look at, and Craig, is that I'm not sure that these positions are new positions versus what has been done in the past. Maybe these are just vacant positions that should have been somewhere along the way that he's bringing up that we should have.
Well,
It could be. you know?
What I got out of it is, if he could get these 7 positions filled, it would do exactly what you're talking about. That cuts the caseload down.
Yeah.
That cuts down the aggravation and the frustration that's causing a lot of people to go. We also know there were some other issues there which we're addressing. And pay was one of them. We've addressed that in the past year. So I think that's what he's asking for. But again, I would prefer that we just hold off,
Yeah.
let him come in on the 30th and make a presentation to you, not only on these 7, but the other 4. Now, the other 4, those are money. I want to be clear about that. If you do them, that is money.
Yeah, I had more interest in the program investigators, because we only have one person in this county as far as what do they call it? Program integrity, or fraud.
Yeah,
investigator.
these are the fraud investigators.
And we definitely would need some improvement
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we'll hold off on that then till Monday, next Tuesday. And he'll be here at 9, so we'll start off the meeting with Earl and go through all this. All right, the next one is public health. And,
Let me just mention what she's passing out is what Earl passed out to the board yesterday, which would take the place of the ones that are right at the end of that tab, showing you where those new people would fit in.
right. And again, not to spend a lot of time on it, because we're going to go into detail on these on the 30th, but obviously the public health fund funds the public health department. Okay, so that's everything you need there. Wayne County Schools current expense, we spent a great deal of time talking about that this morning. And I think the key there is we've used the formula. This is the second year that we've used that formula. And so they will be, there is one mistake here in the write-up. It says for fiscal year 18, it's $360,384. I think y'all have a correction on that. Did y'all say that, or does it say 349?
349.
Where you at?
349? Okay, mine's just the old page, so I need to correct it there.
Where you at, Joe? That handout.
The third paragraph, down at the last line, it says for fiscal year 2018, it's 360,000. It's not, it's 349. We made an adjustment, and I still have the old page. Okay, the next one is the Emergency Telephone System Fund. This is the 911 money we get from the state. And I give you the full background on that, how it used to be a local fund, then the state changed the law in 2007, now it's a state fund, they've grabbed the money, and now they want to throw all these rules on you about how you can use it. I've given you state law on that, and I've given you a list of what it can be spent on. I think the best way, the easy rule of thumb to remember on this is we can only spend this money on equipment and furnishings and things on the inside of the building. We can't go get a tower with it. We can't pay salaries. We can't do anything like that. Okay. Everybody clear on that? One thing I did want to, under the notes, I did want to, on the second page, first full paragraph, says no salary or fringe benefits is shown coming from this fund. As the state 911 board now has a policy that we cannot pay for personnel from this fund. However, we can pay our employee under professional services. So there's logic in there somehow, but that escapes me. But the bottom line is we're paying for the employee in here, just like we've always done. We just can't do it through salaries and wages. So this fund is down because last year we had capital outlay of computers of about $337,000. This year we don't have that, so it's a large decrease. Okay, the next one, and I think the next one is fire districts. Not a lot to say on that. I've given you the write-up on statutorily how they're created. We continue to have the problem, like all counties do, and really throughout the country, and that is fire departments are having a problem in recruiting volunteers. There's a lot of suppositions as to why that is, but the bottom line is enough of a concern to the state that the state Department of Insurance is doing a study now and has people from different areas reviewing that and to try to come up with some recommendations on that. But it's a continuing problem for volunteer fire departments.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
You're exactly right. It is a problem on personnel, but they seem not to have a problem on spending money on things that it could be contributed to hiring personnel. I'll leave it at that.
Would you elaborate on that a little bit more, Mr.?
Well, there's some departments that probably need some paid personnel, and some of the equipment that they're spending the tax dollars on, I feel like their emphasis should be on hiring some personnel, especially for answering daytime calls. They're in pretty good shape on nighttime calls, but the days of a farmer getting off the tractor and jumping on a fire truck is over with. I feel like there's a need in the county for some of their funds to be used to have some paid personnel.
And that's what you're seeing more and more across the country. In some of our fire districts in Lincoln, we had the same thing, not across the board, but those with the higher call volumes and things like that. And what we did is you don't hire them around the clock, just what Wayne's saying, you put them on basically a daytime schedule during weekdays, because that's when we have problems getting them. The one thing I did want to call your attention to under the notes, that's the second page of the write-up. Everybody got that? Just a summary of the request is on the next page. New Hope Volunteer Fire Department is the only department requesting a tax increase from 6.3 to 7.5 cents. The department has developed a 10-year capital improvement plan and wants $40,285 in additional revenues annually to fund it. According to the OES director, they may qualify for $2,500 annually in state fire grants. These are matching grants for capital outlay. However, in recent years, these grants have become much harder to get. And in fact, they told me for departments over 200,000 revenue that it's even harder. They're trying to give it to the really smaller departments. And this one does have over 200,000. So consequently, I'm recommending the full 7.5 cent tax rate, which would provide the requested revenue. If they're successful over the next few years in obtaining some grants, then you might want to revisit this. But in the environment we're in now, we don't think that's going to be a consistent source of revenue. I did originally, but in talking to Bill, he convinced me that that's not going to be the case. So I think they need the money. And I commend them for doing a 10-year plan. You know, we're asking all of our departments to do a capital improvements program. So it's well thought out, and I think it's justified in what they're doing.
And I understand that grant was rejected.
It was.
Was it?
It was. Yeah.
So that just says what we were thinking
And that's
about.
exactly what I was hoping was great.
So the next page, we do this for you every year. We give you what the tax rate was in fiscal year 16-17. We're giving it to you in 18. The only one in bold type is New Hope, because that's the only one requesting an increase. And again, I've just given you a justification for why I think that's valid. So, anybody have any questions? That's basically it on the fire districts. We do give you information on each one of them, including call volumes and things like that, basically like we've done in the past. So,
Mr. Wood, I would also like to make a comment on New Hope. They acquired a truck several years ago and anticipating the need for it, and now I think they've realized that maybe they didn't have as much need as they thought,
And my understanding is that they have sold that truck and supposed to close on it in just a few days. I would commend them on
Yeah.
that.
Like I said, it's a well-thought-out plan. I think they've looked ahead 10 years, said, what do we need? What's it gonna take to fund it? And that's why they're making the request. Okay. Let's see, the next one is the streetlights fund. That's the next tab. I think everybody remembers we have 3 of these districts. We started out looking at 5 or 6, but these are the 3 that got the petition they needed. We went forward with it and put everything in place with Duke Power to turn those lights back on. And essentially, we have put in a 4% increase. And I want y'all to understand why. I think everybody saw recently Duke has applied for an increase. We read through it, we talked to Millie, we can't get a clear bead on the percentage. So it goes into effect, as I understand it, January 1 of 18, so a half year. But y'all remember, we do this and we collect the money by December, that's for the following calendar year. So I've put 4% in there.
I think that's prudent.
And, you know, we've got a little bit of fund balance in each one, but we felt like we'd go ahead and take that up. So, and you're talking about pennies. I want to stress, these are not monthly rates. This is an annual rate. So, you know, when you go up 4% from $50.62 to $52.65, you know, it's $2.05. So it's not a big chunk of change there.
Yep.
Anybody got any question on those? That's working out well, by the way. I
it is
think
working out
we don't
well.
get any complaints. I'm assuming y'all don't.
We're still getting praises for that, by the way.
And before you move on, I think some commissioners asked for another 10-minute break.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's do that. 10 minutes now.
10 minutes, for sure this time.
I'm coming after you.
You have the street light, and we've gone over that, everybody understands that. The next thing is a new fund, and that's the street assessment fund. This is for Canterbury and North Creek. And,
Well, mine didn't have anything in there.
Really? For street assessment?
Mine was empty.
Janice?
What are you looking for?
the
Street assessment.
Mine's empty.
It's a blue tab.
I got the tab, there's nothing behind it.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of pages there.
Here's some pages.
I guarantee you.
It's empty.
It's empty.
I got 3 pages.
Yeah, that means you don't get a sense.
But I'm gonna take another break while y'all looking at that.
Yeah, you got,
Well, I only have 2 pages. How'd you get 3?
yeah, you got 3 pages behind there. That's a huge report.
Does anybody
Well,
need
I
one?
did have 3, there's the third one.
I really don't have any.
I'll get you one.
They're gonna take care of me. Go ahead.
Okay, well, this is the new, this is the street assessment project, and we got the bids in, and I showed y'all what the bids are, we'll have that on your,
So are you changing this number to reflect the bid?
we will, yeah.
Because this is based upon
This was based.
2.2 million.
Yes, yes. So,
Now, I do have a question though on the interest. You know, the interest isn't gonna be $99,000. On two-
on 2.2 million, it's, yeah,
Is it that much?
you're charging 5% interest on $2 million.
I ring you right? Really? Okay.
Same way it is on those houses stuff you've been selling to people, you just keep dragging in. Same thing.
Okay.
Shoe on the other.
Interest is a real.
Anybody got any more questions? But Joe's right, we will be adjusting these numbers because This was predicated on 2.2, which was the engineer's estimate. It's gonna be around 1.6. So that's about a $600,000 savings there. Now, we will need some of that money for some cost changes on MRAC.
Now,
We hit bad soils and a few other things.
How is that gonna work? If you let the bid out and they do the work this summer, we pay for it. When is the assessment going to go to the landowners?
Starts the following year.
The following year. When you say the following year, are you talking about
The bill will go
January?
out in September of the following year.
September, so it goes a whole year.
Yeah.
Well, really and truly, you're not gonna collect any monies then, are you?
Not for a year.
Not for a year. Let me think about that. Yeah, let me think
Certainly,
about
you're
it.
not gonna go a whole year.
No, we may do the assessment separate this first year and go ahead and bill them.
I would think so.
I would think so.
But
I
in
think
the
they're
future-
expecting it.
Well, we did that on the street lighting. you
Yeah, we
remember?
did.
Yeah.
And then we came back the following year, it's on the regular bill. But yeah, we're not gonna go a full year and not get the money.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, we need the money. Okay.
Get them used to paying.
All right, EMS and Wayne Net. Emergency medical services is what this covers, and then Wayne Net. One thing we've done, we combined those, but one thing we've done is the revenues and expenditures can be source separated. The user fees are separated between EMS and then Wayne Net. The big issue here is that we did estimations on the revenues last year. You remember that was an estimate because of Johnson Ambulance Service. We had no idea of knowing. We knew they had some issues of where they were charging for a stretcher, which is a whole lot more than if you're a regular call. Well, apparently there's more of that going on, was more of that going on. So our revenue projections were too high, so we're having to adjust them back down. But there's a second issue, and that is our accounts receivable with our billing company have gone up, have increased in an 8-month period by $500,000. So we're not happy about that. We've had some conversation with them, and we want to bid that out. We've been with the same company for years. But part of that may be the way Medicare and Medicaid is reimbursing and taking longer to do it. But part of it is we think it's continued to grow. And so we don't recognize the income, it's on a cash basis. We don't recognize the income until we actually get it in, right? So that's part of why we're low. So we want to address, that's the main thing we want to do there, is go ahead and bid that out. You've got the,
We're working on the request for qualifications now, or request for proposal now, and trying to get everybody together and finalize that, and then have board and George have the final approval. But I think we've been with the current company since 2002. So their rate of return for what they collect is 8% also, and rates are down much more than that, so you should be able to get a collection rate anywhere between 5% and 6%. So there's some cost savings to that as well.
so we basically want to go ahead and move on that. And plus get these back billings collected.
Please tell me again, how much are we collecting overall? How much are they collecting? Is that what you?
Well, it would
And they're
be
getting 8% of that.
That's their fee.
total, the recommended is about $10 million.
They're collecting $10 million and
Well, let
getting
me-
8% on that?
Hang on just a minute, Joe. I was looking at these.
I think I'm gonna go in the collection business.
No, it's not that. Yeah, it's not that much because we have some people who pay too. Let's see, we have 3.4 million is user fees from EMS. And then you have user fees EMS, Wayne Net of 1.6. So that's what they're collecting.
They collected all,
No, they're collecting about 4 million.
4 million.
4 million.
Now, is that our total billing? It's
Yeah.
not our total billing.
Well, that's a percentage of what they're collecting, and there's a lot that are either going to debt set-off or going to a third-party collector. So it's.
So if I'm getting this straight,
They're cherry-picking the revenue.
do we bill directly out? So we have a billing company?
Yes, sir.
We have a billing
and
company.
collection. Yes, sir.
And after they bill it, if they don't collect it, then they turn it over to this other company to collect?
Yes, sir.
How much does the billing company charge us?
That's the 8%.
That's it.
That's 8%, so they get 8%. What does the collection company get?
It's a higher percentage than that, and that's part of why we want to renegotiate on.
Are you gonna bid out both of those, the billing company and the collection?
We're going to have, I think the way we worked it, or working on the request for qualifications, if they have to send it to a third party, is that their 8% will be lower because they're not doing any more additional work. So they did that initial work, but if they have to send it out to a third party, that they should not be doing the same amount of money.
Well, should we not put it out for a bid on both of those? I mean, if it's been 15 years since.
We can look at both. I don't have a problem with that.
Have we looked at it again to say that it's cheaper to go outside than do it internally?
I think it is still cheaper to go outside. There is, and we could have Nanette come in and give it to you, there is a lot involved in this Medicare and Medicaid stuff.
Where's the company out of that's doing it now? Where are they from?
Winston-Salem.
What's the say?
Are the companies that do both?
I can't answer that until we get the proposals back. I don't know that.
This makes me wonder if that might not be cheaper. I bet there is.
Probably just a office next door.
It's like if you're in the billing business, you'd be in the collection business too.
Well, I think Joe makes a good point. Let us look at that. We've got the billing part ready to go. We'll look at that. But anyway, go ahead,
Just
Joe.
one question on the revenue side. Are you going to show the gold leaf money for that EMS station here?
It's not, it's in the budget. I'm trying to remember where I've got it. I think I have it.
You got any capital improvement?
Yeah, we added it in. It's in, but now what I put was 150, because, no, I'm sorry, you're talking about EMS, not the, I was getting confused with the industrial park add-on. What are you asking me again?
The 300,000 for the EMS station, the golden leaf, have you put it in the revenues?
Yeah, under the CIP we have.
Okay. Yeah. Not in here.
No.
It's in here, but I think you just reduced the expenditure for that Seven Springs station that they got the grant for.
Yeah, that's right, because we'll be doing the grant in a separate fund.
We didn't show
That's-
the revenue.
that's how
in
that's
there.
works.
Just redo the budget amendment.
Another question too on the EMS expenditures. I see on maintenance and repairs of equipment, when you look at further down, service and maintenance contracts, those figures look mighty low to me.
Well, I think they're able to do it for that. We went through it with
Where you at? I lost you. Where you at up?
Maintenance and repair contracts on the chart. It's,
Another tab?
another two.
No, still in emergency.
They don't have the pages, maintenance and repairs of equipment. This one right here.
it. Let me suggest this. Today was not to get into the details.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
We'll
We're gonna do that next week.
Okay.
I'm just
All right,
trying to
we'll
give y'all the throw over here. All right, the next fund is solid waste. And of course, that runs the landfill, and it runs all the convenience sites. So that's basically what this covers. I don't think there's any big changes there. You will see quite a bit of capital outlay, but that's because the replacement compactor is $725,000. Now, if we can get a used one, we'll try to do that. Remember last year we tried to do that. This one is self-supporting because the fees cover everything. So it doesn't impact our general fund. Okay. The next one is the sewer fund. We've already talked about that. I give you the background on what all we've done to correct that. But basically, we think it'll now be self-supporting. And just a reminder, we have a $178,000 grant coming from Golden Leaf, and that's going to replace that pump station out in the field next to SPX that was flooded in the hurricane. Everybody remember that? So, I think that's everything there. We have an $82,000 contingency in this budget. Now, the good thing there is, y'all know, we went through some fund balance there as we were going through this problem, trying to find the I&I and paying for it and everything. What I'm recommending to you is you don't touch that, don't touch the rates, build that fund balance back up, because when you do need something, their stuff is relatively expensive on the sewer system. So, but we need to build that fund balance back up.
George, I just want to back up and ask you a question. Where does Golden Leaf get their money from?
Tobacco.
That's what I thought.
Farmers that should have got it.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
From us tobacco farmers that should have got it.
That's right.
That's what was telling my head, that it was tobacco money.
Right. Yeah, it's that settlement money.
Yeah, Mr. Aycock, right.
And Mr. Aycock, you said the tobacco farmer should have got it. What did you say?
Yeah.
Well, yes, when the money was, when it was the buyout, no. And the farmers that had produced it for 200 years got very little of it.
And so there's a bureaucracy somewhere that's got that money that's deviling it out when they want to.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. That is correct.
I've always I've always thought that, I just never heard anybody make a discussion about where Golden Leaf all of a sudden looks like they're Santa Claus. But, okay.
It's nice to be on a board where you can be Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's what I
Just
think.
give away money.
That's what I.
Okay, the next fund is the airport fund. And I just wanted to say again that one of the best things that has happened is that UNC Healthcare helicopter. It is adding to our fuel sales fairly significantly. We met with them as late as last week on the lease, and they're working on that. Trying to, we had an agreement, and then they wanted to enlarge it. And now I think where they're looking is they will do a standalone building right behind the hangar because of the fire code and everything involved in housing their people there. We prefer that because that leaves more hangar space, and they're talking about maybe a second helicopter or a corporate jet as well. So, that's been a thing that helped us. The other thing I did want to point out, because it's unusual, is that in this particular year, we're not using any general fund money. So it's self-supporting. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, I wasn't able, I did put it in here. If you look at the top of the second page on the narrative, it says no transfers from the general fund are required to balance this budget. It means it's self-supporting, except for the Eastern Region funds. Remember, we use those as the 10% match on the capital project. But it'll also generate $26,953 in property taxes. Now, that does not go to the airport fund, that goes to the general fund. You could send it over to them, but there's no need to because they're already self-supporting. But I'm just trying to make the point that our airport is self-supporting at this point.
That's fantastic.
And first time, and that's because of that UNC
Yeah.
helicopter deal that we've
We'll
got.
take it any way we can get
That's
it.
right, that's right.
And we had a real good weekend this past weekend on.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
But that is unusual. Most of them do not break even. There's usually a
Right.
subsidy from the general
That's
fund.
correct.
So I just wanted to point that out to you.
So there's another department that you've turned to the positive side.
Well, we're trying.
We're trying.
Okay, MRAC, of course, this is our new fund for it. We will start spending some money now. But what I wanted to show you is we're up to 200, we're estimating 270,000.
Whoa.
And we think that may even be a little low. That's 135,000 per 1 cent. And when we negotiated that deal, it was at about 115,000. This thing has grown, and bear in mind, our two biggest attractions aren't open. And that is obviously the Maxwell Center itself, and the other would be the 8-field soccer complex that the city's developed. So our two main attractions aren't even open yet, and we've seen a dramatic increase in our occupancy tax. I mean, Bill and I go to the meetings every month, and we just marvel at the growth rate that we've had on this. So, again, remember, this represents 2% of the overall tax, of the 6%. And then the 1%, you remember our 1%, we give to Goldsboro, they give us this 2%.
Right.
Because of how the law was. But remember, we get a large portion of that we get to use for advertising and marketing, the MRAC. So I think that's been a good deal for us. I just wanted you to know that it's bringing in that kind of money. It'll probably, by the time you open it, it'll be over 300,000, and then the estimate for the following year will be even better because we should have more hotel occupancy, even more with those two things open.
I know we're not supposed to get into details on that, but if you will take a look at your salaries on that, it seems like there should be some other positions under expenditures.
I have left that, and the reason I've left that is you see what we're doing is leaving that until he gives us exactly what he wants. Right now, we put it in advertising, but we won't need that much along with the other.
Okay.
And so we're planning on bringing the operations manager on probably a month to 2 months in advance, but really it depends on when James says he needs him.
You're gonna need them for about half a year, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
And operation manager is the person overseeing the way the building.
Well, what he does is he does the setups and takedowns, he interfaces with the caterers. In other words, he's in charge of the day-to-day operations. James's
He's the
job
grunt guy.
James's job is to go out there and market this thing and get bookings and attend trade shows, and, you know, he's there to bring stuff in. This guy operates the center. Okay. All right, and we don't have that in yet. We'll come to you later in the year with a budget amendment on that. But it won't be additional money, it'll be moving some money around. Okay, the next one is workers' comp fund. As y'all know, we self-insure on workers' comp insurance. Basically, the way this operates is we charge all our operating departments $480 a year, which is $40 a month, in a premium, which we then take out of their funds and move to this one, and then we pay any claims out of this fund. This fund is very healthy, and so it's doing extremely well. So we're not recommending you change the rate higher or lower. And one of the reasons is you see in there, our specific stop-loss deductible is $500,000. So while we're doing extremely well, one really bad accident could eat up a lot of money. So you need to have good reserves in there, and we do. So I'm very comfortable with where we're at there. Has anybody got any questions on that one? Okay, the hospitalization fund is our next fund, and I go into some pretty good detail there about how it's structured, with us being a self-insured fund and how it operates. And I then go into what percentage we pay and what percentage employees pay. And then I go into, on the second page, about midway down, we talk about this 11.6% increase, which we had to absorb this year. And that has required $783,000. So I just wanted y'all to know that is a big cost center for us. It's like with everybody else, it's just, you know, it's the blob that's eating everything. But that's after we got it down. Remember, it was going to be $1.2 million. So thus far, through April, we're having a much better year this year. And we're in line with projections. So hopefully we may even bring a little fund balance back up this year. But we've projected next year, assuming that we would eat this 11.6 and have to amend these changes. And I've listed the changes here, so if anybody asks you what all we did to change the plan, that's the 7 or 8 lines just below that explains what we did. So our employees will see, those who do dependent coverage will see an increase in their premium. So remember, we pay for the employee themselves, they pay for any dependent coverage. So the chart on the next page goes over that. And I'd just like to go over that real quickly with you so everybody's following it. You'll see that the bulk of our employees, we have, first of all, we have the PPO medical plan, and then we have the HSA plan down below. The bulk of our employees, 570 out of 778 that we insure, are employee only, meaning they've not selected any dependent coverage. The employee and child, they would pay $218 a month, and we pay the $675.18, and so the total premium for that is the employee and child is $893.25 a month. Everybody following that, how that breakdown is? Employee and children, so if they have more than one child, it's $319.10 a month they would pay. Employee and spouse, they would pay $358.28, and then if they went to full family coverage, it's $538.64 a month that they would pay, and we pay the part for the employee, and the actual cost is $12,000 a month. So full family coverage is over $14,000. I mean, this stuff has just gotten ridiculous. So that's where we're at on it. Does everybody understand the chart? Follow what we're saying on this?
Afraid so.
Yeah, it's bad. And then the last fund that we have is the Fleet Management Fund, and I think the key issue there is the increase we're asking for from $48 to $60. This is all internal. So we bill our operating customers, and they turn around and pay us, and then we use that to run this fund. So that is all of the funds. The next thing I give you is the capital project ordinances. All this is to give you a brief update. You know, we have, not all of our money is appropriated in the budget. You remember when we do capital project ordinances, like when we're doing the Maxwell Center, we did a capital projects ordinance and we set up a separate fund. Everybody remember that? These are the ones like that, and all I'm doing here is giving you an update on where we are on those. And we did close out 2. which was the Grantham Spring Creek Middle School Capital Project Ordinance, has been closed out. Allison has also closed out the school's renovation capital projects fund, because the schools, remember that was the 12.3 million, I think it was, and about 5 or 6 renovations of schools. The others, just give you an update, it's the Maxwell Regional Agricultural Convention Center Capital Projects Ordinance, the 911 Communications Center. We have the County Capital Projects Fund finance the satellite jail. It now has, it's remained open, but there's very little remaining at this point. We've spent the money on that. And now we have the new one, which is the Meadow Lane Elementary School Capital Projects Fund. So between the Maxwell Regional and the Meadow Lane, that's the bulk of where the money's going from the debt issuance. Okay.
So if I'm reading that correctly, on the Meadow Lane, you're gonna open the bids on May 31st and
Yeah.
start construction in June?
Yes.
Opening bids today.
Yeah, today. But we gave them a deadline, they had to have them by May 31. The LGC has to have the information by May 31.
Okay.
The purpose, one of the purposes is if they don't get the 2 today, they can rebid it and get it by the 31st. And that's the drop dead for LGC.
Drop dead.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we refresh my memory, this funding for this school is through the bonds that we just?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
So far, we don't have any projections of taking anything major from our fund balance, except the 911 call center. Is that?
Well, you had the 911 call center in the current year's budget.
Yeah.
You were going to use, was it 4 something million for the schools?
Oh, from the school sales tax fund, 4.6 million, I believe.
We were doing that for
Fremont.
Fremont. Remember that? Those classrooms up there?
Yeah.
We were doing that.
Yeah.
So we're doing that.
Okay.
But that was school money. And that's school
Yeah.
sales tax money.
My concern is, of course, I'm very, very conservative when it comes to dollars, but over the last years, I've seen things come out of the woodwork that we didn't think were coming, like this $2 million thing with it.
Right.
Okay, and my concern is that we really need to keep, and Craig, I'm talking to you too on this, because you're gonna be with us. We need to really keep an eye on our unencumbered fund balance.
That's right.
Because you never know. You never know when something can come up and take, and 2 or 3 items like this stuff that was with the DPI over here, it wouldn't take long to wipe out, other than the 8% that we're required to have. And I'm really conscious of that, and I'm sure everybody else is.
Yeah.
But you don't ever know what's looming out there, you know?
And we'll go into that in more detail next week.
Yeah.
But we are aware of that. If y'all remember, the last few years, we've actually underspent the budget.
Yeah.
Like this year, we brought fund balance forward. So while you've been spending some down, like with the jail and some of these other things, you've also been replenishing it as you've underspent your budget. This debt service schedule, I want to go over this a little bit with you because what you're going to see is this is the debt service for the county, and what you'll see is that starting in 18, you have 2017 limited obligation bonds. That shows you the debt service. And principal is 1.9, interest is 1.6, so that's 3.5 million increase. But remember that in 20 you have money coming off, and then you have money coming off in 21 also. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see total expenditures are spiking up. They stay spiked up for 2 years, then they start coming down, and then they really come down. And they'll plateau at about the 3.8 million. Everybody see that? So that's the spike we were talking about, and that's why we're using some fund balance. But once we get past that spike, everything's fine. Okay. Now, going back to what Joe was talking about, we will need to break that out, and we'll need to take some of that over to schools, because this shows county debt. No, I'm sorry, this shows county debt. The next one is for the Board of Education, and so we'll need to put some of the 17 money in here and correct that for you, okay?
Yeah, take some of ours and put it on the school.
That's what we're doing.
Well, take,
We're going to.
I know, take some of our real monies and put it over on the school.
Okay.
Can't do that either. He said, okay.
I had to think about it. All right. Now you have, these are the Eastern Region monies. And that's the repayment schedule there. And y'all recall that there are various municipalities are repaying us some of that money, and we're repaying some of it. And the only other thing in the budget is, in the back, there's just a glossary of terms. So, you know, if you come upon something you're not familiar with, this glossary will help you there.
I want to back up just a second. On the clarification, like the jet port, and I think we had some Eastern Region money that the county is using. Those payments have already, the jet port, for example, we're making those payments to county back to the Eastern Region, right?
I don't think the jet port is, I think the general fund's just paying for it.
Do it, well, somebody.
The general fund is, what you just saw is the general fund paying back
the Eastern
Region for the money.
Yeah.
Then you allocated Eastern Region money to about 3 or 4 different areas, and one was the airport.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. And that's pretty much the budget. So this gives you time to read it for a week, and then we can come back and talk about it. And again, that's not the only work session. If you want more work sessions, we can do that anytime up to June 20th. But if we're going to work on the interim budget, we will have even longer. But ideally, I would hope that we agree on what we're going to do on the budget, even if you delay the vote on it, so that when the state does adopt a budget, we know what we got, we're ready to move. Is everybody in agreement with that? Okay. So in the meantime, my understanding is what you want us to work on is look at an interim budget that'll carry us through until the state gets a budget, so we know what we got on the $2 million, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, that's the budget. I'm going to briefly just go through the CIP. It's even easier. And then I thought we'd break for lunch and come back and do the nonprofits, the outside.
Maybe at lunch we can have our closed session.
Yeah. Yeah, we can. In fact, Borden needs you too, because he's got to be somewhere at 2. Okay, this document's pretty straightforward. I give you a 1-page explanation of it. The guts of it is the spreadsheet on the page, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th pages. And all the stuff behind there is nothing more than what people have requested. And there is a table of contents to that. Just before you get to tab 1, everybody see that? There's a table of contents which will give you, it tells you which tab is which department. Everybody found that one? Okay.
Yep.
So then what we have is, a list in alphabetical order by department. So don't pay any attention. The order doesn't mean anything about significance of how important it is. We list them in alphabetical order. We put all of them for one department together. So you can see what is that department requesting. Then what we do, we give you a brief description on it. And then FY18, everything listed in 18, you will see is in the budget. So you basically lift out fiscal year 18 and you put that into your operating budget. 19, 20, 21, 22, all you're doing when you adopt the CIP is you're adopting that as a plan. That doesn't mean it's locked in, because we look at this every year and we amend it. But it does give you a plan of when we think we would do those things. So if you see something you think should be done sooner, we can look at that. The only thing I would caution you about is, for the most part, we kind of need to think about what would you move in order to make room for that. Because if you go to the third page, okay, about halfway down, see that bold type, total proposed expenditures? Everybody got that? You got, that's the amount in each year. Down below is the revenue source. And you'll see, while there's 48 million in this coming year, 42 million is the bonds. Everybody see that? And then 2.1 million is from the general fund, 1.86 million is from emergency medical fund. That is, Joe, that answers your question, that's for the stations.
Okay.
And so as you go down, if we got airport grants, they're in there. If there's any grant associated with any of these projects, it's in here, okay? So we do the expenditures first, and then we show you the revenue sources to cover it. The last line on the third page, you'll see it has goose eggs in all columns. That just means it's totally balanced. So that you're identifying the revenue sources to do what you say you're going to do. So this is not a wish list, this is actually a plan that you can afford to do. The other thing I did want to stress is, go back up to revenues, budgeted from general fund. First line, everybody see that? $2,099,000 in this year. Then it comes down, 1.3, roughly 1.3, 1.1, 1.5 I'm trying to keep it in a range there. Now, department heads always want everything tomorrow. So this is not, when you look at the sheets, when you look at when they've requested it and when I've recommended it, there'll be differences in the timing, because, you know, they want everything in 18 and 19 basically. And you can't do that. So we have to spread those out. But the key to this is for y'all to look through this and decide if you think we've picked up on the right priorities or you want to change them as you go through this. And you will see there are a couple of things in here where I've put not funded. And that means they've requested it, but there's no dollar figure on here because I'm recommending you not fund it. One of them is the fire training facility, and the reason for that is we don't have a real number yet. So my feeling is we should leave that blank until we do the study and we know what we're doing. The other one is the renovation of the COB, and again, that'll be a big ticket item, but I have no way of knowing. Because number one, we don't even know if that's going to be a renovation or a new building right now. So I just put not funded for those at this point. But that's basically it on the CIP. And again, you have explanations on those sheets and behind it. If you want to bring a department head in to discuss any of these, we can certainly do that. But our next schedule for all of this, which would be our budget for the internal budget and the CIP, would be on the 30th. And so I guess now we can break for lunch. And
go to closed session to do that?
And go to closed session.
And what reason?
Need to consult with, need to change the current plan for.
Have a motion on the floor to go to closed session.
Move.
Have a motion on the floor, any discussion? Everybody raise your right hands. Do I have a motion? Closed session. Motion stand.
help bring this group in. You got my question, Joe?
I don't believe it's the point of not using the group. I think the group's a valid group and do a great job. I think what Commissioner Daugherty was saying, there's no need to duplicate services by adding another person to payroll, because they're wanting a basically administrator or case manager when the state's going to provide one through the Lutheran grant. So kind of what we're saying, be a duplication of services. But the actual long-term recovery group, hopefully will stay inactive, do good deeds that they've been doing.
And I just want to make a comment too. I admire what they're trying to do, I really do. But I just can't get away. I think this is a duplication of service. I asked Representative John Bell when we were in his office, if you recall, I said, is there enough money to take care of everything out there? He said, yes. Matter of fact, there's money left over even from previous hurricanes. It just hadn't gotten to us yet, not all. And that helped me make my decision. And,
I just want to ask that question out loud for the record, that we would not deny this if it meant that someone could be missed and not served, who this group would pick up, and the folk that we have now would somehow or another not have them on the master list.
And then in addition, some little background has been done. We can't identify another county that's doing what they're asking to do. So it's strictly separated.
All right, gentlemen.
all right, we're ready for the vote.
You ready to, oh, yeah. I thought
All
you
those in
had.
favor, please raise your right hand.
Okay, just going down the list, Wayne County Chamber of Commerce, you remember in 16, we cut a number of these by 3%. So their request was to recapture the 3%. And I did not recommend you do that on any of them, I don't think. Mount Olive Chamber did the same thing. They're asking for $24 more for the 3%. I didn't recommend that. Hot Topics, that stays the same. And as you know, we do one of those, we sponsor those. Gateway Capital is way down, as you can see from that. So Fred just asked for a little bit of that. And then on the operating assistance, 27,560. Well, one of them we're calling administration, the other operating assistance, it's basically the same dollar figure. And basically that covers
The rent.
is what it really is. Okay, next one is Mount Olive Airport. As you know, we had a 3-year agreement. That agreement is now ended, but I'm recommending you stay with the same because we've been giving them that every year for years and years and years. Friends of Seymour, you remember that went down dramatically in 17 from 150 to 61,000. Everybody remember that?
Yeah.
And so that stays the same to 61.5.
And are we satisfied with the results of what we're getting there?
Yes.
That investment?
Yeah, I think they're doing good. And you remember we made the change too, to where we're basically using what the state MAC is using, which makes sense because we're getting the same information. So,
Bill and I are on the finance committee, and Bill, from what I've seen, everything's fine with them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're giving us good advice with the.
okay, East Point, they requested 187,969. I left them at the same 42,000, which is the drug court.
They never did provide us with that information we requested.
No.
And we made it clear, and you were in
Yeah.
that meeting too, that we, that we wanted to know the basic services and what were the optional services.
That's right.
Because we don't miss people, then we want to pay more than what we should be paying, and they still do not provide it.
Yeah, and we didn't get it.
Are we still gonna switch?
I don't know, it's up to the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services.
I thought it was up to the East County to go in.
They've already voted to do it.
Oh, okay.
they're waiting now for a decision from the Secretary of Health and Human Services in North Carolina. Makes the ultimate decision.
Okay.
Okay, Wayne Uplift, left them the same. They requested the same, and I left them the same.
Tell me what Wayne Uplift is all about.
That is basically support for the battered women's shelter.
And are they not also receiving free rent on another building of ours?
They moved, didn't they?
No, that was the pregnancy
That was the pregnancy center, okay.
This is the Uplift. They do use that building in the parking lot of the health department.
And
Yeah.
what do they do there?
They store clothes and furniture and stuff there, because the whole plan is if someone is a battered woman, she's got to basically start over. She's moved out. So they're trying to help them get established, basically. with
I have a
household.
lot of experience with that, if I could share it.
Sure.
Oftentimes, the wife and the children, and there are occasionally times that it's a husband, but most of the time it's a wife and children, and they are taken out of the home, perhaps in the middle of the night, with nothing but the clothes on their back. Wayne Uplift will provide them with toiletries, toothbrush. They will provide the woman with clothing so she can continue to go to work if she has a job, or they will actually help her get the opportunity to go get a job because the husband has suppressed her up until this point and kept her almost prisoner in the home. They provide clothing for children and school supplies so that they can go back to school. Food, household items. They literally help them start over, but first they protect them in some sort of environment that the general public doesn't have access to, so that the person that has abused them doesn't have access to the minor.
Thank you.
Good enough for me.
All right. And y'all remember, you've got these tabs if you have any detailed questions on their application. Okay, nutrition for the elderly, that stays the same. That is the congregate meals that Wages does. And we run that grant program through them. If they weren't doing it, some counties do it directly, but they do a great job. I wouldn't recommend you change a thing, but that'd be one of those. If they weren't doing it, you'd be doing it. Okay, next one is Watch. And they were at 165 last year. They requested the full amount, but I recommended 170, which if y'all remember, when we were talking about negotiating this, we had agreed to go up 5,000 steps, and they were satisfied with that. Yeah. So they will not be making a presentation to you is what they told me. Okay.
Now, the only thing that I would want to ask is, I heard you say that somewhere up there, you were cutting some 3% as we did last year. Did you say that?
We didn't cut them.
No. I know we didn't cut them, but
I'm not cutting anybody else. We cut 3% back in, I believe it was 16. No, I'm sorry, it was 16, 17.
So no one's getting cut this year. That's all I want.
No. The only question is whether we're going to restore the 3% or not.
Oh, okay.
Well, let me also say on Watch, I still strongly object to taking tax dollars and contributing that over to Watch. I still contend that Watch is a great program, but is a direct benefit to the hospital to reduce the use of the emergency room. I think that was what its original intent was, to be able to get grant monies to fund it. But that said, I know when I'm outvoted, so let's move on.
Okay, the next thing is wages for foster grandparents. You've been giving them 5,000. They requested the same, and I'm recommending approval of that. Communities and schools, I think this is the one exception I made. We did cut them 3% last year. That is a great program, and when you look at the statistics, and I recommend you read it, the graduation rates, the improvements they've made in that, I think we ought to support that, but that's my opinion. So y'all can, either keep them at 126, 100, or take it up to 130. My recommendation is you take that one up to 130. In other words, restore the 3% on that one. Literacy Connections, that stays the same. They requested a little more because they wanted the 3% back, but I left them at the rate that we had the previous year.
I expressed my same concerns on Literacy Connections. We've got community college, we've got all of these programs that are out here to promote reading and learning to read, and I just think that those need to be used versus this program.
Well, if that takes place, Mr. Daugherty, I'll be glad to vote to defund literacy, but up till right today, that's not taking place. So that's why Literacy Connection is so important. But if any time you can show me, or the Board of Education or the community college can show me that they're taking these people into account, I would definitely vote with you next year to defund Literacy Connection.
Okay, Old Waynesboro Commission, we had them at $33,950. They asked for an increase this year because they did have some damage out there. But I left them the same at $33,950. Old Waynesboro, last year you gave them $25,000 extra. Y'all remember that for the Civil War memorabilia, and those cases, those security cases are in the museum now. That's the temporary place for them. Obviously, they didn't request it this year, and we didn't give them anything more.
It's probably a good thing they put them in the museum rather than out
there,
right?
Yes. Okay, next thing is Goldsboro Bridge Battlefield. Same thing as the previous years. The one thing I would like to say here is we actually own that. And so these guys do a great service for us because all we pay for is the materials, and they go out there and maintain everything. So this really isn't so much supporting one of them as I mean, it does support them, but it's a cost savings to the county. Okay, next is the Historical Society. They asked for $5,000 more, but I left them at $20,000. Arts Council, they asked for the same thing we gave them the same thing. Purple Heart, they did request $250 more, and I gave it to them. If you haven't been to that banquet, I strongly encourage you to go. I went last year, and it's a great event, and I think $250 more is a small amount to give.
In addition to that, all the free service they give us down at the Veterans Center.
Yeah, that's right.
Will really help out.
That's right.
Just about every day a week.
Yeah.
I'm like Mr. Wood, I've been to that several times, and I didn't realize we had that many Purple Heart recipients in Wayne County.
I didn't
There's
either.
a lot of them.
Yeah. It was an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, it has been.
And let's gotta remember, next year, when we get the convention centers up, that it'll be held out there so they can increase the size of it.
Yeah.
Because they really could grow it, they just don't have enough
Yeah,
room.
that's a great idea. Well, I know when I went last year, it was full capacity.
It was.
Okay, WISH, of course, that is the Wayne Initiative in School Health. This is a program that does a lot of good in our schools with our children. They requested the same amount, and I recommend you give them that. Firemen's Association, if you recall, we had talked about doing the 3% less, but y'all restored that. And so you gave them 18 last year, they're requesting 18 this year, and we're going with recommending the 18. Law Enforcement Association, the same $1,000 we've been giving them. Last year, we had requests for mental health and also the Edwards Community Center. We did not fund them, and they did not make a request this year. The next thing is the 4-Day Movement, Inc. You have the background information in your book. This is basically this is a new request of us. It's a relatively new nonprofit. I did not see where they have that much financial support. and I was concerned about the stability of it. I did not recommend approval of that, because I don't think you want to get in the business of starting to support groups that are really just getting off the ground. He's been there about 3 years, but it's been at a very, very dollar figure low level. I'm not saying they don't do some good work, but it's a small amount. And the last thing is the long-term recovery, which you've already dealt with. And so that's basically the request and what we've come up with. So,
Mr. Wood.
yes.
And I see the Edwards Community Center, they requested $29,000 in 16-17.
Yeah.
And you say they did not request anything this year?
Did not.
So there's no write-up in here about them?
There's no
That's
write-up.
what they do?
Right. You'd have to look at last year to see that, because he didn't make a request this year.
What about the Mental Health Association?
They didn't make a request this year. You know, we had not funded them. You've never funded them.
Oh, okay.
They requested in 16-17, and we didn't fund them.
Right.
And so this year, they did not ask for any.
This Edwards Community Center, they are in the business of training. I know I read it last year, but I don't remember from last year. They in the business of training.
Ed, I don't
adults.
honestly remember it. We can get the book and give you what they requested.
If you don't mind, I like that.
But they didn't ask for any money.
Wait, Joe, that's not, I'm getting to something, buddy. I just, there's constant conversation in the community, and I'm a part of it, about providing training skill opportunities for folk. And Doc, we always hear that, oh, that could be provided at the community college, but we've been hearing that for the last number of years, and then there's still folk out there trying to do things within the community. I just don't want to, I want to make sure that we're not missing a group that we could assist. And I know, I'm not saying $29,000 is a little bit of money, but it's not the greatest dollar amount in the world. And I thought they were going to request again this year so we could delve a little bit into what folk do out there in the community for training. Because as you look up this sheet, there's ranges of duplication on this sheet that it's supposed to be done by all kinds of groups, but and I just want to make sure that we're not missing a group that may be working on skill training for folk who may be left out or who might slip through the cracks someplace. A lot of times, there's a lot of attention for folk before they leave high school. If they make it to the community college, and sometimes that's when they get to be 25 or 26, but there's a gap right in there where a lot of these folk are on the street doing mostly nothing. And you gotta ask whose fault is it. We can always say it's their fault, but they're still on the street not doing much of anything. And sometimes there's a little skill training piece that we may be missing. And I don't know.
Ed, you know, you and I have talked about this, but I really truly feel the training, that the dollars are there through, it's called WIA now. And those dollars are through the East Carolina Workforce Board, and you have to apply just like you would with this dollar.
Who applies for it? I
You have to apply direct.
Who would have to apply for it?
Well, whoever.
You mean the Edwards Community Center would have to apply?
They would have to apply. They would contact, Tammy Childers up there and apply for those dollars. Those are dollars, many times are left over that we never spend in Wayne County.
All right.
So
And that's through employment security?
No, the Workforce Development Board.
Workforce Development.
So the money comes down from the feds, it goes to the state, then they send it out to the different workforce boards.
Okay.
And I can give you that phone number. It's not a
Yeah, please
problem.
do, because I'm on
But,
just.
yeah, we return money every year that does not get spent,
Okay.
that's set aside for Wayne County, I can tell you that.
Okay.
I'll tell you, Bill, when I first was assigned to go to that meeting in New Bern last year, I thought it was this group that I was in meeting with, but it was another group that had less relevance to what.
But don't confuse East Carolina Council and the East Carolina Workforce Board, they're two different entities.
Okay.
They actually used to be part of the same thing.
Yeah.
Until we broke away and became an independent nonprofit, the Workforce Board. And I won't go into details about how that happened, but it did. And some people went to jail, let's put it that way.
Mr. Chairman, are we through?
I think we're through. I guess we do. We need a vote on this for you, Mr. Wood.
A what?
A vote to approve your recommendations.
Well, I think you had a vote.
Or do we just do
You're
that?
not gonna do one, the rest of them, I don't think you need to vote.
Okay.
But does anybody have any concerns about any of the others? I think they're pretty much what they were. The only one I took up, like I said, was communities and schools. But I really felt strongly that, that I took back up from the 3% cut. I did take up Purple Heart 250.
Well, I don't think we have anything else, do we?
I think that's it, so we just need to recess until.
Do we need to recess until the
30th.
Make a
30th?
motion, we recess to the 30th.
Are we gonna do it on 8:30 again?
I think it was 9, because didn't we say we had to do the agenda?
Pre-agenda.
Okay, that's right, that's correct, that's correct.
Yes, and we'll have eggs that morning.
And my understanding is this work session that we're gonna have on the capital improvement plan and also these departments. After we have that, we're not gonna vote on the budget. You're gonna do some research in regards to possibly a continuing resolution or an interim budget or whatever.
Yeah, we're looking at that now. This is the booklet, this is the state law on it.
So next Tuesday, you can advise us.
Yeah, I can advise you then.
And Carol, I would suspect, when we get through all this, we're probably gonna be ready for lunch. If we get done by lunch.
Do what now?
Lunch?
Lunch and breakfast?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Eggs for certain, Joe, I promise.
Eggs?
Really?
Well, you can bring me an egg.
Oh, that comes from a chicken now. You know I don't like chicken for breakfast.
I was just doing a quick calculation real quick on the outside agencies, and I'm in the ballpark. But if you take the 986, 618 total for all the outside agencies, if you take out the ones that the county has a relationship with, if you will, like the Chamber of Commerce and so forth, then the actual left of nonprofits that are not directly related to the county, we're funding out of that 986 somewhere around 415,000. I think last year it might have been like 390, but that's actually, this figure looks high, but here's the key. A majority of these outside agencies are supported by the county and this commission board because they are part of our county. If you take all those out, you're looking at around 400 and change.
Well, the other thing, if y'all remember, 2 years ago, we went through all of it.
Yeah, we did.
In a lot of detail.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you vetted them pretty well as far as the need and everything.
Yeah.
But, as far as the responsiveness, I think they're doing a very good job of giving you the applications. They're complete. There's probably more information maybe than you want to see, but they're doing a very good job of reviewing it, coming in and talking to us about it.
Look, as we're getting ready to leave, since Mr. Daughter had a question, I wondered if he had any rebuttal to Mr. Mayo.
You tried to make a fight.
I'm just kidding.
No rebuttal.
No recess.
Wow. Started.